All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, the Vintage Collegiate, here at the Hollywood Designate podcast. And here we have our co host, Shilo.
Hello.
And we also have two guests as well. We have Daniel from my neck of the woods. Say hi.
Good afternoon.
And we also have Evan, all the way from Washington.
Howdy.
So, yeah, we got everybody here today. There was a little bit of a little miscommunication going on, but we figured it out. So, yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad to have you guys on and for episode 4. Yeah, I thought,
Yeah, thank you for having both of us and everything. It's really cool opportunity.
oh yeah,
It's good to be talk about something I never thought I'd actually end up doing.
well,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. So I thought at first we should begin with a question here. I want to begin off with what started your fascination with vintage clothing. So, Daniel, when did your fascination begin?
About ninth grade, I discovered the swing revival. Basically, just swing music in general. The more I started learning about that, started watching videos of the bands playing, and figured out the guys in the '90s they were wearing 1940s suits and clothing, and I'm looking at that stuff like I want to look like that. Remember in particular, it was an appearance of Royal Crown Review on the Conan O'Brien show, and you got Eddie Nichols as a singer, and he's wearing really high waisted pants with suspenders. He's got a spear point collar shirt and a short wide tie, like real like swing tie looking thing. Oh, I want to dress like that. I want to look like that. Just kind of got pickier about the stuff I wore over the years.
As you should.
Yeah, yeah, as everybody should. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, swing. Everybody's got interested in swing music. I think everybody here has. So I think that's partially
Mhm.
why everybody kind of dresses up, in this sort of fashion. So Evan, what got you started?
Yeah, I definitely agree that music is a huge. I think music is honestly what I got into before I got into the clothes as much. I think probably because music is just a little bit more accessible. You don't have to spend money to open Spotify and listen to all of the biggest popular like swing artists and everything. But when it comes to the clothing, I always knew that I really liked the proportions of like golden age menswear stuff. But I didn't. It took me a long time before I like let myself figure out why I liked it. Because characters in fiction who dressed in suits and things, I was always gravitated to. And like as a little kid, I was always dressing up in like top hats and like ties and stuff. I was definitely the suit kid at my high school. But it wasn't explicitly vintage stuff. I didn't actually start buying true vintage until like after the pandemic. Before I got into historical clothing kind of exclusively, I was just really big into sartorialism, and which is just like formal wear and menswear stuff. But as I existed in those circles for longer, I just kind of became disillusioned with like a lot of the rigidity of the rules and things that I liked in history that were frowned upon by like influencers and content creators and things. And for a while, it was like I didn't. I was really kind of split between what I liked, but recently I've moved pretty much exclusively just into like a mindset of if people in history wore clothes a certain way, then it's fair game, and
Mhm.
that's what I prefer more. Like looking at more at original photos as opposed to just fashion illustrations really makes you appreciate that clothing is made of cloth and that it doesn't look perfect all the time, and that there is an elegance to regular people wearing regular clothes. And it makes you feel a lot better about the way that you dress and the way that you look too. I've gotten over a lot of like weird dysmorphic stuff in my head about like the way my pants fit by just looking at old photos of the way people were wearing their pants. I'm like, see, like he looks good, and his pants look good, so my pants
Hmm.
look like that. My pants probably look good too. But yeah, I was to back to the question. It was mostly like sartorialism that I really got into, but I kind of used that as like a stepping stone to get into true historical clothing and stuff. So I
Yeah,
would
I
say
think I
there
sort
wasn't
of
like
had the
one specific influence, but it was just a lot of little things, and then I finally started to pay attention to the things that I liked, and more specifically, like why I liked them. And then Instagram was a big help, like finding like-minded people that I could actually talk to as well. So yeah.
yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
think I sort of went on the same journey with it. Is it started off like emulating the classic style, wearing suits and everything, and the sort of the types of things that they wore. But the more I learned about, okay, how was this stuff actually cut? What did it really look like? The more I was like, okay, I want to look. I don't just want to emulate the style of that. I want to look like that. I when I step out of the house, I want to look like Clark Gable did in 1936.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, Shiloh, what got you started?
I think it was a big part. It was the music too for me. But it was definitely the Queen Mary because I was as I was researching later on the ship, I would look at what the people were wearing, and all throughout the 30s, throughout the 40s, post-war, all the way up to the 60s. And I always found it kind of a cool thing because you had this 1930s ocean liner with with in balance with people wearing 60s clothing, and it's you don't really find it anywhere else. So I was looking through all these photos, and I was looking throughout the decades, and I think that compare or compiled with the music really drawed me to that, and I think that's really where I got my first start. Um, but I think I really started collecting true vintage stuff a few years ago, and I think I started with the ties, like the swing ties and stuff, and then I branched out to other stuff, and I have a decent selection now. But I like particularly as we talked about before, the California sportswear, and I think Evan kind of nailed it on the head here. Is that if people wore it in the past, then it is historically accurate. If you want to wear corduroy trousers that are cuffed with a white t-shirt, we have footage of people walking down Hollywood Boulevard in 1939 wearing that. So it did exist, people did wear it, and I really do think there is an elegance to people wearing somewhat casual clothing, like a striped t-shirt or something like that. We got pictures of Frank Sinatra wearing that. We have all kinds of, Les Brown wore that. We have all kinds of photographs of people wearing casual clothes that almost look similar to clothes that people would wear today.
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, always looking at old photographs is really fun and try to base inspiration on. And it's also better to see Kodachrome photos of
Yeah.
people wearing this stuff too. And I don't know if you guys do this, but me and Shiloh, we go on eBay and we always find old Kodachrome photos that people are selling, and then we're just like, oh wow, they actually wore this back then, and it's
Mhm.
it's
Hmm.
crazy. Some of it's really crazy stuff, and it's like stuff that you weren't not expecting, like older people wearing Hollywood jackets or rickety
Yeah.
jackets.
Well, there was one photo that we had of an older guy wearing fishing boots, like up to his knees, probably past his knees, with probably some kind of water resistant pants or trousers, and he's wearing a Hollywood jacket over that.
Mhm.
So, stuff like that, it was common. It's just, yeah, when people get drawn exclusively to the catalog illustrations and the magazines and stuff, yes, they did wear that, but that's not the only thing they were wearing. There is a much larger variety of things that people forget about. And it's a lot of the stuff that really stemmed the type of clothing that people wear today. Like, people are always shocked to find out that graphic t-shirts were invented in the 30s. They always think it's kind of like a 60s or 70s invention, but no, it was around much longer than that. And I mean, people were wearing t-shirts type of shirts all the way back until like the late 1800s. That's when they first had, usually it's for like swimming wear and stuff, but they had that type of shirt. And it just people forget about because they always think whenever they hear the date 1900 something, they immediately associate it as ancient, and therefore it's so far in the past that they couldn't possibly have anything like we do now. And I was talking to Maverick about this the other day, is that a lot of the things that people had in the 30s and 40s, we have today. Like they had appliances that we use. They had types of clothing that we wear now. They had, a lot of the things that were invented, even in cars, were invented in the 40s. Power windows, they had those back then. And it's just a culmination of different things that people forget about because they associate even the 50s as being too ancient to be anything like what it is now today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really bugs me. Especially the mindset that like everybody was always wearing formal wear all the time.
Yeah. Hmm.
Because I mean, you get into like I've gotten a lot more. I started with formal wear. That's kind of what really got me into vintage stuff. But then like I've gotten into workwear mostly because I've somewhat like had to. So like just for the sake of not having that much money and needing resilient clothes that I can wear every day, and there's not nearly as many like upkeep standards. But you look at people in the past, and it's like they had so much more of a
Hmm.
variety in their wardrobe than people think they do. And so it's always so funny when you look at people who perpetuate the notion that everyone was wearing formal wear all the time, and it's like no, they had nice clothes just like we have nice clothes when we're doing nice things. But what people
Hmm.
were really good at back then was just having the right clothes for every occasion. I feel like nowadays we
Exactly.
don't have that as much, and that's why so many people feel uncomfortable in so many modern clothes because they don't feel as efficient as they could be. But I love
Mhm.
just historical fashion under the broadest umbrella of it because it's like every uniform for every task, whether it's workwear for farming or fishing or whatever, or mechanics, or if you're just working at home, or if you're going out for church, and there's always a perfect outfit for that, and it's the proportions and the utilitarian aspects of it are like I lost my train of thought. It's all there was a dress code for many different occasions, and they were all different levels of formality, and not everybody was dressing like Fred Astaire, you know. And I think that helps make the past feel a lot more. You can relate it a lot more to. It feels just more like today. Like it's really not that different, but people think of it as so alien for some reason when
Right.
it really wasn't.
Well, and it adds the human element to it because, the they were wearing, just like I mentioned before, they were wearing things that people wear today, just in a casual setting.
Hmm.
And people, and even the most casual thing, like if you wear even a loop collared shirt, I'm sure with a high waisted trousers, I'm sure they would call that too formal to be casual. And
I've,
Oh,
I've gone
dude,
out wearing my overalls before, and I've been asked like why I'm dressed up.
yeah,
What?
yeah,
Like it's workwear, guys.
Hmm.
right,
It's always the hat. I'm sure the hat is the thing you guys get complimented on the most. It's always the thing that
mm,
people immediately point out to me. They're always
yeah,
like, "Nice hat." And I think it's whenever you add a hat to an outfit that's especially if it's a fedora, but even like a more casual like work cap, people always think of it more costumey for some reason, which is
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah.
I think I mostly get compliments from like my ties or something. I don't know. It's usually not
Mhm.
the hat. I don't know why.
I'm
Yeah.
not. Yeah, I think it's like a half and half. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you're wearing a swing tie, it's obviously very different than a normal, department store tie most people are wearing now. So,
Yeah. I think both
especially
of them are the things people's eyes are drawn to immediately first.
mhm.
Well, what were you saying, Daniel?
I was gonna say, especially for someone like me, I will freely admit, I like to peacock. I like wearing stuff that is flashy, bold, especially my ties. I don't think I have a single solid color tie in my wardrobe except for the bow tie I wear with my formal wear. But otherwise, I like bold colors. I like things that are flashy. I mean, just look at the jacket I'm wearing, like this old boater jacket,
Hmm.
black, white, and red. You don't get there are a few things quite as bold as that color combination. So
Mhm.
it's your stuff if you're like me, the stuff you wear tends to stand out, even if it's one thing as an element, a part of other stuff. Like if I'm wearing a black suit, I'm usually wearing a tie that's, well, black, white, red, or has some kind of bold red, or sometimes even green on it. I've done medium green,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that tends to
Yeah.
get people's attention. And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always believe that it's like it's the tie that makes it. Because if you wear a jacket that's like, you can find jackets that look like they're 40s and 50s that were made in the 80s. And if you wear one of those with the swing tie, or even sometimes wearing a modern jacket with, somewhat wider lapels, if you wear a swing tie with it, it looks significantly different than if you wore anything else with it. So it's really the tie that really stands, well, not only just stands out, but it like highlights the entire outfit pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with what Shiloh's saying. The tie does make that difference
Hmm.
for sure. So I got a question for you, Evan. Are you in college?
I'm not currently, no, I'm not in college. I have my associate's degree
Okay.
because I did a program in high school where I was able to take it with minimal cost. So I went ahead and did that. But I'm on break from university right now because I'm kind of undecided.
So I know you're not in college right now, but right now I am. So I just have a question for you. Do you have anybody like any weird reactions, any like strange comments about your wardrobe when you were in college?
For me,
Yes, yeah.
at the time that I was going to college, luckily I wasn't fully into like true vintage stuff, so I was saved from too much harassment. Most thing I'd get made fun. I mean, most people keep to themselves at community colleges. Really, it's not the same experience as going to like a university at all. It was actually a very lonely experience I found because if you didn't have to talk to anybody, you seldomly did. And that's also just the culture of Washington. I mean, Seattleites have a really bad reputation for being difficult to approach, but it's more so that like people around here are less outgoing. But once you actually, everyone's very nervous to start a conversation, but then once this conversation gets going, people are just as social as anywhere else. But everybody around here is they keep to themselves for the most part, so it can be difficult in like a college environment. But I do live in a college city right now, and I'm friends with a lot of people who do go to the university here, and I go to hangouts and parties and things with them pretty often. And when I do, I try to be myself and wear the clothes that I like to wear without peacocking too much. But luckily, most of the reactions are pretty positive. I haven't really had any like overtly negative reactions to the way that I dress in general. From younger people, it's less like I think people they don't compliment you in the same earnest way that like old people do. Old people usually like it a lot. But people closer to my age, usually they don't compliment you in the same way. But I think it's really interesting how a lot of people who don't do vintage menswear from like 30s or 40s, you can still have a lot of conversations with people who do other eras of vintage fashion or even just are into clothing because a lot of the concepts overlap. So I've had a lot of I've
Hmm.
had surprisingly filled out conversations with a lot of people who I don't have that much in common with outside of clothing. And even though we're talking about different styles, there's a lot of overlap. So it makes it's nice. It's nice to have those conversations with people. But yeah, for the most part, it's your usual like really like Peaky Blinder comments or
Yeah.
uh I've been called Mormon, I've been called snake oil salesman. I've been called all manner of things, which is really weird to me because like I don't wear really anything before the 1930s in my everyday wardrobe. So when I get called things like snake oil salesman, which is like 1880s, and I'm wearing like 1940s stuff, I'm just confused. I'm not even like mad. I'm just like your perception of history is really disappointing right now.
Yeah.
Um, but no, yeah, for the most part, it's positive. It's positive conversations and reactions to my clothing, which I'm really glad about.
Oh, that's amazing.
I got what my experience has been, and I didn't have anyone really. I never had comments about. I have had Peaky Blinders comments. I have had those. But more often than not, mainly because of the way that I comb my hair and everything. Is I grease the hell out of it, pomade and everything. But that would usually get comparisons to, especially, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio or Robert De Niro. I've heard a couple of times. I get compared to actors. That's usually what would
Mhm.
happen. It
Yeah,
got
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've
old.
had that a few times.
I would
yeah, me
accept
too.
either of those comparisons, honestly.
Yeah,
There are worse things to
Yeah.
be compared to, so.
I got called a
That's
bunch of
fair.
different actors. I
Yeah.
think the most common one I think is like Bing Crosby or something for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Especially with
Yeah.
the do you bring your pipe in public pretty often with you?
Oh no,
Yeah.
no, yeah, yeah. I wear like sometimes like I wear the fedora with my blue collar shirt buttoned up with the pipe. The Bing Crosby. That's usually the older people that say like, "You look like Bing Crosby." I'm like, I
Mhm.
kind of. I mean, I guess I kind of do, but I don't know.
Yeah. I see it.
Yeah. Especially with the pipe. Yeah.
So yeah, I know. I know. Before Shilo, you joined. We were talking a little about tobacco. I mean, with
Hmm.
I know a lot of people in the vintage menswear community are. I not a lot, but some people like guys like us are big into tobacco. So what are you guys' thoughts like about vintage guys getting into like that tobacco stuff? I mean, it kind of goes in that realm, I guess.
I think part of it might be getting immersed in the culture of the time because we get a lot of us. We listen to the music, we wear the clothing, we watch the movies. It's what they did back then, and after a while, that just kind of rubs off on us in terms of like the stuff we do. We start adopting some of the mannerisms, speech patterns, or whatever. And I think the smoking is just one of those behaviors that eventually it just kind of, even if you're not keen on it to begin with, you kind of just become okay with it, and eventually you might start.
Yeah. So Evan,
Absolutely. It is a huge slippery slope. Like getting just into vintage clothing, you can't very seldomly do you meet people who just stop at clothing. It like leaches into every other part of your life. And if you're interested in living history, especially, which I've become really big into, is just like not just reading in about the past, but like if I'm gonna dress like I'm from the past, then I kind of want to like try to. Everyone who does vintage wants to. They do it. I'd imagine largely because they really want to know what it would have been like to have lived at that time. And so
Hmm.
if you adopt the habits and the appliances and the decor and stuff from those periods, then that's really the closest thing to getting to time travel, really. So smoking was kind of like that for me too. I definitely think I had the same mindset of like I wasn't super keen on it necessarily or like eager, but I was way more willing to try it because it matched my clothing and because it was such a common habit back in the day. And now I unfortunately have come to love the sensation of it. Um, and the memorabilia for like Lucky Strike and Camel and all of those other brands is so fun to collect and stuff. Um, but yeah, same with me.
yeah, yeah, a lot of that the cigarette stuff I've seen. Like sometimes I go to antique stores and find unopened pack of old golds or Chesterfields or even the green Lucky Strike packs before it was turned into the white ones. Those are always fun to collect, and
Hmm.
I always pick them up for my friend in Vermont and from Vermont and then ship them over there. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Shiloh, how do you feel about it?
Well, I personally don't consume it, but I like to collect the things from it. Like I personally love lighters, so I always like to collect lighters, and I mean, those I can use for anything really. So I use those for various things, but I really like the streamline and the deco type of lighters. The rectangular shaped ones, and also the advertisements. I really like the advertisements. I collect those. And sometimes even like the packet empty cartons, or sometimes I think I saw a full one somewhere. I almost got it, but I like to collect that stuff. Like it's really unique and it's very yeah, it transports you back to that time really. I think my favorite brand from back then is like especially just from the design of the packages and the advertisements is Chesterfield.
Oh yeah.
I think there's
Chesterfield
something to be
has
said
my
about.
my favorite packaging design out of all of the different brands. Chesterfield's is just so ornate. Sorry to cut you off, Daniel.
It's so good. But I think there's something to the idea of like the all-around experience of something. Like, is one of the reasons I especially started smoking cigars was because my friends here around Holland and we'd meet up and we took for quite a while. We were taking a yearly summer vacation up north, and we'd sit out on my grandparents' back porch. This would be summertime and everything, and we'd set up a deck of cards, pour some whiskey, smoke cigars, and play cards for a few hours. And there's something about having that whole experience of it. I even was putting on my slower bluesier big band playlist that I got and playing that for it. And there's something to be said about having that complete experience like that. That I'm I'm not sure if even really have the words to describe it, but it feels different.
Hmm.
Like
Oh yeah.
that's the best you're gonna get out of me from that. That's all I can figure.
I think we all understand. You don't have to say. You don't have to
Yeah.
spell it out. I think we all get it.
Oh yeah.
It is magical.
So another question I want to get past here. I know we covered pipe tobacco content, but there's you know I don't know if anybody has heard of these mutton collared overcoats. Has anybody heard of mutton collars?
I haven't heard of them, but I think I know what you're talking about. Is it the ones with the really large upper collar? Kind
Um,
of or is it or like the best I can describe is like a camp collar shirt if it was like a lapel on a jacket. Is that what you're talking
uh,
about?
no, oh no, no. Mutton collar shirts are basically overcoats. They almost kind of resemble trench coats in a way, but instead of like the collar, the lapel of the overcoat, it's made out of like a what is it made out of? Like kind of like a what
Like
is
a
it made?
fur.
Alpaca. Alpaca. It was made out of like
Yeah.
alpaca
Oh, okay.
fur. Or
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yep. That's what I was suspecting. I've seen some nice ones. I've seen some nice ones. I think though, I see those and I think cold weather because
Yeah.
I see anything fur line like that and I think cold weather.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, overcoats are more versatile because you can wear them in various parts. I mean, people in California in the 40s were wearing overcoats. But those types of overcoats, I think, are exclusive probably to really cold weather because that was the intent when they were designing it. That's what the purpose of the type of fur that they were using. Or some, I'm sure those ones even have thicker quilted linings, and sometimes I'm sure they even had fur in the lining. So those are kind of, I think personally at least, exclusive probably to colder type of weather, or at least weather that you'll probably be experiencing consistently that's cold enough to be using those kinds of materials.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, yeah, I fortunately own one. I haven't worn it at all this year. I wish I would have worn it more often, but it was like a blue gabardine, made of blue gabardine, and the alpaca. It's kind of like a off-white color, and it's a really nice one. I think Daniel, I think you've seen it. Or
Yeah,
my,
I tried it on back when I got that Hollywood jacket from you. That was
yeah,
a
yeah.
really
Yeah, I know. I just haven't. I just wish I had the chance to wear it though. But I remember last year when I was a freshman at Western here. I get a lot of comments wearing that. They're like, "Oh, you're the pimp. You're a pimp today. Oh, where's the disco music at? Yeah,
Yeah.
ready to go to the disco. Wearing my
You know, that kind of reminds me too, is that those types of collars, and especially taking your shirt collar, you're like usually on a loop collar or something, and laying it flat over your jacket collar, that has been tarnished, I guess, by the 70s. Whenever people see that, they always associate it with the 70s, and they've been doing that for a long time. I think even before the 20s, but you can find it showing up in the 20s. people wearing
Hmm.
spear point collars that are over their double-breasted jacket lapels. And it's been a thing for a while, and it's just widely associated with the 70s now. With some of the other things too. I'm sure some people will see a spear point collar that's clearly 30s or 40s, and they'll be, oh, it's a 70s shirt. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know
It's just,
I love to point to a scene from it was the movie You'll Find Out, starring the K Kaiser Orchestra. Start of the movie, they're doing their whole college of musical knowledge thing, and the whole band are wearing single-breasted jackets with loop collars spread over the top of their lapels.
hmm
And this was like 40 or 41 was when that movie was made.
yeah. Even in Europe, that was a popular style. I have photos of Teddy Stauffer's band, which was a Swiss band, but they were playing in Germany, and then once the war broke out, they moved back to Switzerland. And their band uniform it's kind of really modern for 39 to 41-ish. And it was a prop, maybe linen, but it was just or maybe actually gabardine now that I think about it. But it was a double-breasted suit, and they wore a black loop collar shirt that was spread over their lapels. And I have never seen anything like that before, especially for Europe. And that's what they were wearing. That was their band uniform. And yeah, and I mean, there's also some people that I've heard of that are, or like I guess groups in the vintage community that are indifferent to that look. They don't take that look to their own wardrobe, which again, it was very popular back then, and it looks nice. I mean, it's especially if you pair it right with the type of jacket or whatever, it looks excellent.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very smart look, everybody
Hmm
likes pulling up the loop collared shirt, and pulling the jacket on it. It gives it that nice sporty 40s
Yeah,
40s look, and then people will automatically assume it's a 70s, you know. Oh
right.
yeah, are those flared trousers that you're wearing there?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
Hmm.
I did see some 30s stuff, or even some like 20s stuff that were pretty flared. Like there was a photo, I think it's somewhere in France. I don't know if it was like a race competition or something, but there were some guys wearing flared trousers. They were kind of like it was a strange hybrid between Oxford bags and flared trousers. I've never seen that before, but I think
Hmm.
that was during the 20s in France. So it's been around for a long time.
I'm
yeah.
not
Yeah.
surprised at some weird stuff the Continentals were doing around then. I've
French
seen
fashion in general is very, very hit or miss and kind of
Yeah,
perplexing to me sometimes.
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've seen double-breasted jackets from France from like even as far back as like 36, and they have some really narrow lapels even for a double-breasted jacket.
Hmm.
Um,
Really narrow
which
and
I
really a really extreme peak, which I'm not a
yes,
huge. I prefer the American cut for peak
yeah.
lapels. I think they're just a little bit nicer looking. But some of the
Which
like German and Polish ones are distinctly European, but I can get behind. But the
yeah.
French ones are usually a little frumpy for me.
Well, and it's interesting because some of those French elements from that period, especially double-breasted and sometimes single-breasted now, you can find that being made now as a standard. If you go like to some department stores, you can find that exact style that's being made now. And yeah, I'm not personally the biggest fan of that at all, really, but it's interesting to see that it's around now. Um,
Hmm.
and I mean, and some of the stuff that we were talking about this Maverick is that a lot of the stuff that they were doing in the 20s you can find now in stores and stuff, which is kind of interesting. But because like we always like to talk about this one photo of Glenn Miller from the 20s, and he's wearing this tuxedo, and if he wasn't wearing the type of shirt that he was wearing with the type of tie, if it was a regular modern like pre-tie bow tie, you would have no clue that it was a 20s suit. It looks something like you could buy at a J.C. Penney or something. So it's really interesting to see that that stuff from then is coming back. But preferably, I think we can all agree we wish the you know further end of the scale is coming back, but only time will
Yeah.
tell, right?
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Fashion is cyclical. It's kind of like a big pendulum. It'll swing one way. Something will be
Mm-hmm.
popular for a while, and then after like 25 years, it swings back, and then people want the older style back, and then it just keeps going
Yeah.
back and forth and back and forth. But then every time it comes back, it's like still this. It's not the same thing being repeated. It injects a little bit of that decade into it, and I think like on the subject of what you guys were talking about with like being compared 40s stuff being compared to the 70s. While I really love how the 80s borrows from the 40s and how the
Yep.
70s borrows from the 30s, like I appreciate that. It is unfortunate because then those older versions of those styles get kind of forgotten, and then people only
Mm-hmm.
associate it with something that didn't actually originate that style of clothing, but because it's
Right.
just in
Right.
more recent, it's in more recent memory, so that's what people remember.
Yeah.
Which it's not really a bad.
Right.
It's just kind of interesting.
Well,
Yep.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, and then you mentioned the '80s too, and it's people associate the '80s with like the 6-in-1 double-breasted, jacket or the suit. That's been
I
around since
was
the late '40s in the early
I
Mhm.
was gonna
'50s.
say I found one of those in the thrift store one time that was made at a hotel near me. Like, because there's a hotel, and then down below they have shops and stuff, and they've been around, for a long, long time. And I found one time from one of those shops, and the uh, the cut was it was from the 80s or maybe early 90s, but I got it because it looks exactly like a 40s double-breasted jacket. Same length. I think even the armholes are up high, super wide lapels, and broad shoulders like the 40s jackets were. So I got it, and I wore it one day to school, and one of my teachers was like, "Oh, you got the 90s broad shoulder jackets." I'm like, "No, like this is very 40s, but yeah, okay, yeah, 90s, yep, But
It's an
it's because
understandable comparison, but it
yeah,
is frustrating sometimes.
yeah, I know, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think it's to that same concept. That's where we associate spreading your loop collar shirt or any spear point collar shirt over your jacket lapels. It's 70s, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's frustrating, but
Sure.
it's cool because in a way it keeps that stuff alive. But
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I know, Evan. I think you commented on one of my stories on Instagram about one of those bold suits I shared about this guy wearing a baby blue bold suit with the peak lapels or something on it. And I think you mentioned something like
Yeah, was that the early 50s one?
yeah, and I think you commented about like how the early '50s. I know we mentioned this and pretty much the past few podcasts that we had that early '50s era, especially early '50s, is kind of overshot a lot of the time, and I think
mhm.
it's crazy. Why do you think that?
I think I mean just off the top of my head, like at a cursory glance, I think maybe it's because people often are really preoccupied with World War II style,
Yeah.
and then then the major like the really major changes in popular style in like the mid to late 50s. And I think that's why the immediate post-war period of like 1945 to like 1953 is kind of overshadowed, which on one hand is kind of disappointing, but on the other hand, I'm kind of glad about because I find that's like one of my new favorite periods now, honestly, as I mentioned in when we talked about it. I love like especially like 1946 to like
Yeah.
1949 or right up to
Yes.
1950. And then depending as you get closer to like 1953, 1954, I kind of it gets more hit or miss, but I really love really super early 50s and late 40s style. I just think that it's so comfortable and I don't know. There's just something. It's hard to describe, but it's so like optimistic and bold and so relaxed at the same time. I think it was really the beginning, not necessarily the beginning, but it was kind of. It's very like emblematic of a change in what the ideal in how for a formal wear for men can also be very casual looking at the same time.
Yep.
Um, that was kind of coming already, I think, with the mid to late 30s and then the 40s, but I think it really kind of cemented itself, like the the aura, for lack of a better term, for what like a formal menswear is in the late 40s and then onward kind of changes from what like old world formality looks like. It's
Right.
not the best description for it, but whatever it is, I'm just very drawn. It has every element that I like about every other decade
And
before and after it. So it's
and
kind of
it's
like a
a
really big sweet spot for me.
and it's a really clean look too. Um, same thing with most of the stuff from that period. The cars, the architecture style, it's all coherent, it it matches each other, complements each other. The uh
Hmm.
the interior decorations of buildings do match what people were wearing or the styles of cars. And that's something that we lack today. It's that nothing is coherent anymore. Nothing is cohesive. It's all just scattered about but then especially that little period. I mean, yeah, it existed in the 30s and the 20s too, but especially immediate post-war. There was a lot of that optimistic, or I guess that optimism that you can find in almost every single design. Um,
Hmm.
and I think it was the most optimistic because it was at the very beginning of it. The war had just ended, and now they have all these resources they can use to make um, whatever they please, pretty much. And that's what we see from that period is this experimentation, but experimentation done right. Because we kind of see that experimentation come back in the 70s, didn't go over so well. So they
I'd say
really
it's
nailed it in the
restraint.
40s. Oh, what were you gonna say,
I think
Daniel?
it's experimentation with restraint because they weren't just doing anything they could possibly think of. They still had an understanding of what they were working with and certain
Yeah.
bounds they were working within. Trying new things, but they weren't just throwing everything at the wall and seeing what would
Right.
stick.
Right.
But I also think part of the reason that period is overlooked is it very much is a period of transition. And periods of transition tend not to be nearly as distinct. And so there's not
Hmm.
quite as many things that at least that the layman could look at and identifiably recognize as this period. Whereas like late 50s, you have cars with fins, you have the very skinny lapelled suits, the
Hmm.
really skinny ties. It's a lot more distinctive, as is the early 40s look, with where you're still getting out of, even despite the war, you're still very much in the ballpark of the late 30s aesthetic.
Hmm.
It's a lot more distinctive than that transitional post-war bold look era is, which I think is why
Yeah,
that era doesn't get as much attention.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
And,
you nailed that.
yeah,
I just also think that it's a interesting point to mention that some people think that it's not old because some people are drawn to the vintage style because of it's different because it's old. Nothing, we don't have anything like it now. So I think to some
Hmm.
people, the 40s and the 50s isn't old enough. And it still reminds them of, maybe their grandparents or sometimes their parents. And it's like for the 60s, I consider that, the early 60s, there was some good stuff that came out of that. And because it was still very much the tail end of the 50s. And to some people, that's way too modern. But they were wearing a lot of the things that people were wearing in the early 50s too.
yeah.
Um,
I think
so,
like
I
with stuff, like the topster jackets and the shirts,
yep, yep,
up until about, I want to say it's about like 63, 64, it was basically the exact same ones as you'd see in like 58 and 59.
yeah. Even
yeah,
even some from the 40s, some of them that were made in the 60s have some. I have a few. They're very extreme dagger points, and they're loop colors. And some of that stuff did come back temporarily. Um, but I also think that's another period that's kind of overlooked, the very early 60s. But but to some, to some people that's too new. That's it's not ancient enough, I guess, for lack of a better term. But it's like it's overlooked because yes, it's a transition period, and also it's just like it's either not old enough or doesn't have its own identifiable, well, to some people doesn't have its own identifiable um look. But to me, I think it has the most identifiable look because
Yeah.
you take a suit with a swing tie, and you told me to pinpoint what year that is, and I can probably say maybe late 30s to early 50s. But if you show me a suit that's, a standard double-breasted suit with the 30s striped tie or something like that, well, that can be from the 30s all the way up to the late 50s or even the 60s because people were still wearing that kind of, style suit all the way up to the 60s. So that kind of is a especially for the European suits, that's kind of like a uniform that they all wear,
Well,
is that
yeah.
same type of
I mean,
mellowed,
yeah,
very conservative look.
yeah, and that's also a thing too. It wasn't just Europe that had conservative things. Even later in
That
later
too.
periods, American stuff. I bought some American stuff that were pretty conservative too. Like I bought some arrow tie. Like I bought this really amazing arrow tie, and it was like unlined, and it had like kind of the qualities of like a 30s tie. But the thing was, it was too long. And I like wearing it with my 1930s stuff. Like I wear it with my Palm Beach suit or something. But
Yep.
I also got spear point shirts that look almost as distinctly 30s and 40s. I bought that at an estate sale. I bought three spear point shirts, and they looked, and like the labels on, I'm like, I think this is like no later than early 50s or something. But the thing that gave it away was the double barrel cuffs on the
Oh, yep.
sleeves. Um, yeah, but it was still really neat to see, and I'm like, it's something I could just, probably a lot of the older guys that, wanted that style, they could get that. And
Yep.
even, and one other thing too, and I've seen this with fedoras even in the 50s and 60s. You saw a lot of, you think of the 60s as like these, trilby style,
Hmm.
very small, brim sizes, but even in the 50s and 60s, I've seen some very 1930s looking fedoras, and I sport those with
Yep.
my 1930 stuff, and nobody really pats an eye whatsoever. So yeah, they did have
Yep.
conservative stuff here.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and that's why,
I think that people just overlook the the fact that there's an exception to every rule in
yeah.
history. And
Oh, yeah.
one of my favorite, I just love how people also don't realize how much old, like, you take a random year like 1955, and you have an idea of like what that period looks like based on what was really popular and what was really fashionable. But a lot of regular people in the United States or anywhere,
Hmm.
they're not having they all their decor and their clothing and their car and everything is not, it's not like everything before 1955 didn't exist. A lot of
Yep.
regular people had stuff from the Victorian period, like
Yes.
furniture, where they were still
Yeah.
wearing a lot of their older clothes.
Hmm.
And that's why, like, another reason why old Hollywood films are really not a good reference for interior decor, because I really like some of the, like, really, like, Art Deco designs of those. Like, they're beautiful aesthetically, but if you wanna decorate your house like somebody who was living in the early to mid 20th century, then you are like, it's fair game to borrow from the 10s, the
Oh,
20s, the
yeah.
30s, the 40s, or even before. And one of my favorite photographs is a photo from Martin Luther King Jr.'s rally in Washington, D.C. in like 1960. I can't remember what year that was, 1968, maybe 1960, or mid to late 1960s. And it's a photo of an old man standing under a tree. And he's not super old, he's probably like in his 60s, but he's wearing a 40s fedora and a 40s double breasted suit. And it's just a very candid photo because it's kind of ratty and beat up, but because that was probably what he was wearing, he probably bought that suit when he was in his 30s. And as with any decade, people, as they get old, they just eventually they stop evolving and just continue to dress how they did when they were younger. Um, but even then, you see it all over the place of people not always being up to date, despite the fact that like there's a lot of recognizable pieces from any given year, and I
Yeah.
really like that about history too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there was a lot of people that also just preferred what they had, they prefer I'm sure there's a lot of people that preferred spear point collars over shorter collars, and that's why in the 50s you can still see them being made because there was a market for them still. People were
Yeah.
buying them.
Well, you
And
mentioned. Oh, sorry, Shiloh.
no, you go.
Okay. So you mentioned like older people in the '60s wearing 1940 stuff,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I was watching Schindler's List months ago, and towards the end, like towards the credits where the actors are paying their dues towards Schindler, his grave, and they put the rocks on his gravestone. The actor Ben Kingsley, who played Stern in the movie, he was wearing like I would think it's a 1940s suit. Like he was wearing a double-breasted. It was like a brown pinstripe or a blue pinstripe suit. It was cut like a very 1940s suit, and I think it's a original because it makes sense because that movie came out around 90, 92, 91. And that was
Mhm.
kind of like around that time where the 90s swing craze was going on, and a lot of people were
Yeah.
buying, 1940 stuff. So, yeah, I mean,
Or
it's crazy to see that.
or some stuff was even being made to simulate that. So yeah. Yeah, but it's like I was saying though, like I think a lot of people, well, I think there was a good amount of people back in the day that preferred stuff that they had, like or there's certain styles that they really liked when they first came out in the 40s and they stuck with them because they liked them that much. Because you can find pictures. I've found a few photos of people in the 70s wearing 40 swing ties with a 70s suit because I think they just preferred the swing ties.
Mhm.
So it's just cool to see that. So yeah, I think that's well, and that's another thing too that is along the lines of, rules that are supposed to be or that should be broken, is stuff from different eras being put together because they did do that. Like I said, in the 70s, they were wearing stuff from the 40s and probably the 30s as well. And while I personally probably wouldn't do a neon green 70s polyester suit with one of those, it's still cool to see though. It's still cool to see that they did do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I did see I went to this bespoke tailor where I was stationed in Norfolk, and there's this older black gentleman that walked in with his friend, and I mentioned he saw me wearing my 1930 stuff, and he's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, I used to do that back in the 70s. I paired I think he showed me a picture. He was wearing like a I think it was a single-breasted peak lapel three-piece suit with the brown pinstripes, and you could tell it was a 1930s cut. And he was wearing that stuff during the 70s, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. And it's like something you would never think of too. It's when people think of yeah, like you mentioned, 1955 or the 60s or the 70s, they think strictly of the things that were around and that were new then. And that was, what people had. That's what people looked like. And I was even showing this to Maverick the other day, even in Europe, as far as the late 50s, early 60s, you can still see Model Ts, Model As on the road.
Yeah.
And I have family photos that were taken probably in the late 50s of their car, and their car was an American imported Ford Model A. Well, actually, it was probably probably Model A, and they were using that kind of stuff. And in America too, you can find pictures of even in Hollywood. They had these brand new cars that just came out, the Buicks, the Packards, and then behind it on the road is an old Model A truck that's still being used for produce and all kinds of stuff. So there was a lot of different aspects of eras that were even in the most of updated cities like Hollywood. You can still find a lot of that old stuff that was still around. And especially with the clothing, yeah, the people were still wearing their old clothes, or like I mentioned before, maybe something from the 20s that somebody liked and they didn't want to get rid of it, so they kept wearing it. So you can find that stuff, and that kind of that that kind of gets to a topic that we were talking about earlier, Maverick, is that discussed it before on a different episode, but the very interesting and bold tie designs of the 20s that almost look 70s.
Oh yeah, I've seen some paisley ones that look like strictly 70s, so I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, and like they have a color palette that you would find in the 70s. And it's stuff like that that, I'm sure people were holding on to those because I'm sure those people that really like those. And I mean, I'm sure there's photos around of people wearing really extreme bold 20s ties with a 40s suit or something like that, or maybe even the 50s. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you never know. Yeah.
I did when I went to Detroit to go antique shopping, and I figured, you know what, I'm in the area, and then I stopped at this Lost and Found Vintage. Daniel, I don't know if you heard of this place in Detroit, Lost and Found Vintage.
I don't think so. In all fairness, after having lived over there for 2 years, I avoid that part of the state like the plague.
Yeah, I know they're crazy drivers, but anyways, I went and it was a little bit of a nicer area though, but I stopped in. As you can tell, a lot of their stuff's a bit overpriced, and a lot of the 70s stuff. But anyways, I went downstairs where their suits were, and a lot of the 50s stuff, like the early 50s stuff, were very cheap, like $70 for a suit or something like that. But I went to their tie selection, and they listed this as a 1940s tie, but I can tell from the lining and the cut of the tie. It's a 19.
Yeah.
I would say it's like a 30s or a 20s one, but it was like a neon green and orange and black tie, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was so cool. I should have bought it, but I didn't.
Like I said, I found in the wild, I found tie-dye 30s and 40s ties. And especially when you think of tie-dye, you think of 60s, 70s. But no, I didn't even know this myself until I first found one. But a 30s or 40s tie-dye tie. Like it's just there's just stuff like that goes along with what I was saying is they were experimenting with stuff even as far back as the 20s with crazy neon colors, which I mean, I never knew that they were wearing neon colors, before the 60s, but they were. It's just interesting because it makes you think like, what about as far back as like the Victorian period? What about some of their colors? Like, what were they wearing? Because I'm sure there was
Hmm.
some bold designs there, I'm sure, but
Oh yeah, with the ties, yeah, I've seen some
yeah,
pretty bold ones, yeah. But yeah,
I'm
I
sure that
know.
we've all been rifling through vintage ties and then seeing a design and you're like, oh, that's a disgusting 70s thing. And then you flip it over and you see the label and it's like, oh, this is from the 40s.
yep, exactly,
I've had
yep.
that happen before, and
Awkward.
vice versa.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, there's really stuff that I mean, I think one of the things that surprised you that you showed me, Maverick, is that half-toned waistcoat,
Oh,
right?
was it the swingsuit or whatever with the
No, no,
contrasting?
it was like a 30s waistcoat, and half of it was black and the other half was white.
Half of it's black and half of
And you
it's
had
white.
one made, and then you remember you had one custom
Yeah,
made.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was a custom made suit inspired from the swingsuit. Yeah,
Okay, yes,
from
okay,
the
yeah, yeah,
Sears and Montgomery Ward
right,
catalogs. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And it's like, but you would never have thought that that's something that they made back then, two-toned waistcoat. But it's not even like a usually done two-toned. It was like half of it was black, and then it was like a side half circle that was white. Just really kind of awkward, I
Mhm.
guess. And it's if I had saw that, I was like, well, that's a repro idea or something, like maybe 70s idea,
No,
but no.
no, I have a guy wearing wearing those swing. I have one photo. I can only find one photo on the Vintage Menswear page of the guy wearing the swingsuit, and but the thing, yeah, it was just so neat to see somebody actually wearing it,
Hmm.
and it doesn't look like in the catalogs, and they just misinterpret it, you know. But those swingsuits, very interesting, but. They I think they were introduced in 34 at the furthest I went back in Sears or Montgomery,
Yeah.
and then they stopped producing those until like very the beginning of 1942 when we were involved in the war,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
Yeah,
crazy to
because
think
I'm
about.
probably restrictions. They probably just couldn't make them anymore. But I mean, it makes you wonder is how popular was that stuff? Like
I mean,
how many orders did they get in for
I mean,
that?
it was around for,
I
8
imagine, I
years.
imagine it was mostly with.
Yeah,
Probably
Yeah, I
younger
would
crowd.
imagine so too.
Um, mostly advertisements. I don't think I've actually seen pictures of someone actually wearing it, but I've seen catalog advertisements of pants, trousers, both pleated and flat front, where they have a 3-inch waistband. Sometimes there's just one button, sometimes there's two buttons. I've seen it where they
Hmm.
had almost, it was like double breasted in like a V shape,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and was the strangest bloody thing. But they had it advertised in a catalog from, I think it was like a late 30s, mid to late 30s thing.
Yeah.
Sure exactly about the
Yeah,
date
it
because I
Oh,
doesn't
know
surprise me.
have.
Yeah, and it's like it's weird though because it's like in the 30s they were experimenting with stuff like that. Like they were keeping the suit really the same, but it was like their accessories, like their waistcoats, their ties, and they were really throwing some crazy stuff out there. And that's another assumption too, is that like swing ties weren't a thing until the 40s. But you can find like a lot of crazy pattern, not even just brocades, but just regular ties. Some of them were hand painted, and they were doing that as far back as the 30s with these almost rainbow colors and all kinds of stuff. And they're just overlooked. I think it's like almost the same category as just overall menswear in the 40s or late 40s and early 50s. Same thing as with the ties of the 30s that are swing ties, where they would be classified as a swing tie. But those are overlooked too because they always think of 30s tie. I think the striped tie, the single colored tie, and but I've seen ones that are like it's like navy blue and then it has like a hand painted or has a bunch of hand painted gray squares on them.
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
I think in this case it's a matter of, oh bugger, I had this on the tip of my tongue. I think it's a matter of perception for when something was popular. Oh, that
Yeah,
must have been
yeah.
when it was invented, and it's an
Yeah.
incorrect perception based on that.
Hmm.
And I think why it's not why like those earlier examples kind of get overlooked is because the rest of it's almost like the rest of the it's like it was too ahead of its time, and the
Hmm.
rest of the clothing style just doesn't really match it yet.
Yeah.
So those
So it's
really bold color scheme like 20s or 30s ties, it's not even that they look bad in isolation. Like they probably look okay with like the swing styles from the 40s, but you try to wear that with a conservative like 20s or early
right.
30s outfit and it's just going to look off. And maybe if it were more common, it would be you'd adjust to it a little bit more, but because it was kind of infrequent and it was experimental, I think it just looks kind of weird. It looks like you're mixing decades even though you're not.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
exactly.
Yeah.
a shame, but
Hmm.
luckily a lot of those experimental things like tie dye
Yep.
and wing ties or bell bottom trousers or anything like that, they eventually did have their day, which is nice.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
seeing those early examples of them is super cool.
Hmm. Yeah, especially. I mean, and especially seeing that later stuff come back, like the 70s belted backs and stuff. Like, sometimes stuff was ahead of its time, and then sometimes stuff was behind its time in a way. Because
Hmm.
some of the stuff I think was just it was so good that the design wise was so good that they just they felt like, or sometimes they rediscover it and they're like, why didn't we make that again? Like why did we stop making that? And then
Yeah.
sadly that stuff died shortly after they started making it again. So it's this back and forth of well, it's like even in the 90s, there's the type of ties that I can find that look like swing ties, but they were made in the 90s. Some of them don't have any lining. Um, and
Hmm.
then some of them have really thick lining. So it's weird because they started making them not only design wise like they used to, but they also made them in the same way that they would have without lining or super thin lining, like you can barely notice it. And then they started reverting back to the 70s lining that's like bulletproof,
Yeah.
so
When I
yeah.
used to work at Brooks Brothers as a salesman, and there were
Hmm.
so many great tie designs. Brooks Brothers is still making really nice silk ties, but
Hmm.
you'd have to completely take them apart, repress them, and remove all of the
Yeah.
lining for them to be wearable, for me at least. And
Yeah.
it's always a shame because just starting in the 70s, that terrible precedent of really thickly lined ties, which matched the tie knot, because in the 70s, that was fashionable
Yeah.
to have that almost like 1890s huge tie knot that doesn't
Yep.
even really have a dimple in it. So it worked for that. But if you try to get like a really nice dimple and a really small, elegant knot, even with those nicer fabrics, that lining just kind of ruins it. And
Yep.
that still is a problem today. And I wish that ties were made more like cravats, like they are in like the 30s and 40s and before.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even like the regular department store ones you can find that are not Brooks Brothers, that are some random company, they do that still. And I find that really annoying because it's like, yeah, it's way too thick. I mean, you can make one that's close. You can make a knot that's close to a four in hand that's really small, but it's not the same. And I
Hmm.
have a few Brooks Brothers ones, and I mean, the lining isn't as thick as that, luckily, but it's still thick. It's thicker than
Yeah.
all of my other ties, which kind of sucks, but it's a nice tie. But yeah,
You got to tuck half of it into your waistband too.
yeah,
That
yeah.
Lose
So I
that's
a
mean,
why
lot.
I
usually what I
can't.
do with the
I
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say usually what I do with the I when I find ties from the 90s that look like swing ties, obviously they're long. So I tie it short and then take the tail of it and tuck it into my shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that's the thing for me is I don't wear ties made after like the early 50s because I refuse to wear ties that are longer than about
Yep.
50 inches. I have a couple exceptions where I made for about 52, 51 to 52, but it just I don't like tucking my ties in like that. I I got a very specific look that I like. It's just
Right.
I know what I have my preference, and the only way to get that preference is with a really short tie. So that's just,
Yeah.
but that's
Hmm.
just me being really picky about things.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, even ones that are actually from the 40s, sometimes they're too long for me. But if I can, I usually tie it shorter. And then, like I said, tuck the tail in. And that's something that they did do back then, too. That's not just a new dilemma that we have. That's something they did do back then. But sometimes I can't do that because if I have a hand painted one that that goes up to a certain height, I can't tie it short because either
Hmm.
the whole image is cut off or you risk kind of cracking the paint on it. So sometimes I have to wear those longer, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Um, so now that we covered that, I thought we would I would go back a little bit in our from our last podcast where we talked a little bit about reproduction stuff and custom made suits,
Hmm.
but I haven't really we haven't really discussed about what's a good price for these custom made suits, and like circling back to the last podcast, a lot of this reproduction stuff is getting way too overpriced. Like, what's Simon James Cathcart, it's like majority of us
Yeah.
can't afford a $2,000, custom made, beautiful, high fabric British wool suit. So, I mean, we have to resort to, buying other places, custom made. So I wanted to talk about, what's just a good price for, a good suit. What do you guys think?
Well, I think I usually compare it to what you might find a regular modern day suit at price wise, and I usually base on that. That probably isn't the best comparison, but I don't know. It's if I can get something around that price point that's fully custom, then that's livable. Because I think part of it is people jack up the price because we're making it vintage cut. And because they're making it vintage cut, they're pricing it higher than it really
Yep.
should be. It's
Yep.
still just a suit.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
a suit like
fundamentally, yeah. And I
Evan?
mean,
Oh, sorry.
oh, well, I
No,
was gonna
go.
say
No, no,
like
no. No, go ahead.
to add on to that, like the fabrics, like sure, they might be slightly higher quality than a regular modern day suit, but still fundamentally it's the same thing. I don't think you should jack it up $2,000 more than a regular one just because, your grade of fabric is slightly higher.
Yeah, and what really gets me is that like there's very few reproduction companies that even have good patterns for a lot of their reproductions, or they're not constructed very well. Like a lot of companies I'd buy accessories from, but then they just don't get certain details of like suits right or things like that. I think it's still the best option if you have like strange proportions and you can't find any true vintage stuff in your size. And like Cathcart, I think looks pretty good. It is just a shame that it's so expensive. And even still, I have a friend who ordered a suit from them, and it came out, and he tried it on, and it looked really bad. And then their customer service was not helpful at all in trying to resolve the issue or fix it or anything. So that those kinds of experiences on top of the price being jacked up for like company like Cathcart specifically, I don't have the like I don't know kind of complicated feelings on them. And with the price being as high as it is, it's like I can't even consider if I want to buy from them in the first place.
Yeah.
But even if I did, if I went with something, if I took a risk and like got something through their made to measure program, would it even fit good or be constructed well or anything like that? So
I mean, I
it's always kind of a gamble, but it's nice to have the option, but it's only really if you can afford it. Otherwise, it's kind of out of the it's just as expensive, if not more, than buying true vintage stuff.
Right.
with their just, I guess, off the rack line, their separates line. Like they have, I got a pair of pants from just their flannel. I can't
Oh,
remember what bloody name, but
the
it's
the
just that their
Ellington
flannel slash.
flannel?
I think it was, yeah, the Ellingtons. They're one of those companies that do that thing where, as the waist size goes down, they lower the rise,
Hmm.
Yeah,
and
we were talking
that
about
one
this.
other problem with cut bothers me to no end because just
Ugh.
because my waist is smaller doesn't mean I'm shorter. Doesn't mean I'm any less tall. There's
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's one company I know of that doesn't have that problem. And Maverick, I gush about them all the time. It's this company in London, small family owned company called Morello's,
Hmm.
that
Yep.
they actually did the shirt that I'm wearing right now
Yeah.
and
Oh,
most of the pants that I wear. They have, because they do both 50s peg slacks and the 30s, 40s full cut ones. They do a lot of the casual wear stuff. And in terms of suit jackets, they only do like the 50s box jackets, but their pants are absolutely fantastic. I have several pairs of their pegs, several pairs of the what they refer to them as bags. They sit really high on the waist. The rise doesn't go down with the waist size. Their pleats are nice and deep, which that's just a personal thing. I like deep pleats. If I'm wearing pleated slacks, I want you to be able to look at them and tell they're pleated slacks.
Yeah.
Again, that's just me. But anyways, their stuff actually fits and looks like the stuff that I've seen from back in the day, the stuff that I see in the vintage catalogs and everything. Their stuff actually has that look, and a lot of the other places I've been to, replicas that I've tried, just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say I was wondering about their Luke collar shirts. I've seen them. I didn't know if they were any good. Well, what do you think about them?
Oh, I'm absolutely loving these. So their short sleeve ones are much more 50s. The
Hmm.
collars are very more 50s. I have a couple of their short sleeve ones, and then I just got two of their long sleeve ones that they just came out with. I intend to get more. I fully intend to get more. These things are fantastic. I just yesterday I sent Maverick a picture. I was able to get it done up with a tie, and it actually looked really nice. I think if I were to do it again, I'd probably wear one of my collar bars with it.
I really
But
like that look.
but they really work for that. I wanted to try it to see if they would. They look great, just open. Like here, let me take the jacket off so you can kind of just see the shirt as is. It
Yeah.
fits nice. I like the pockets. The collar is excellent. I really like these. I'm really liking these. I want to get more of them. I got a black one that I want to get.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah. Yeah.
When I first joined the call, I actually noticed like how crisp your collar was, and I was wondering if that was original or a reproduction in my head because it looks really crisp, but it's like the proportions are good. It's a nice shape, and also it's big enough. So I've
Mhm.
never heard. I just looked them up on Instagram. I've never heard of this company before, and I wasn't following them. But maybe I'll have to look into them more because yeah, they seem like they do pretty good quality stuff. Like especially for pants, which is like the number one most important thing for silhouette and kind
Oh,
of make or break most outfits. It'd be good to
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
good place you can go to get custom made pants in your exact size.
Well, I'll
they have.
How
second.
expensive are they?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna second that what you're saying, like about Morello's trousers. I've seen them firsthand. You wearing them, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like they look great. Like especially like with the black with that double-breasted jacket that you're wearing. It was such a smart look too. And I'm like, like I felt like the cuff of it, and I'm like, oh wow, this is nice and heavy. So
Yep.
I second him. I'm like I do recommend getting a pair of them. They're really nice.
And their customer service is excellent because it started off. I got a couple pairs of 50s pegs from them, and then they didn't have anything more in my size at the time. So I sent them an email asking if there was any chance of getting any more in. And like a month later, I had a pair of ones that they did. It was the most 50s looking wool silk blend tweed I have ever seen. And they just did them, they cut them basically made to order for me. And
Hmm.
I actually half the pairs of socks I have from them came from just me messaging Jane, emailing Jane, just ask, hey, what have you got for this style of pants right now? And her doing them for me. They did a custom waistcoat for me that I actually was able to dictate the style of it. Like I had 4 pockets, peak lapels. They did that to specification for me.
And from what I remember, they're not even that expensive, are they?
Oh no, it's like a pair of pants is like 85 British pounds. I think
Yeah.
getting a pair, I usually only
Nice.
order like one pair of pants from them with shipping. I'm paying like at most 140, 150 bucks.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
bad.
and those Cathcart ones are like what, like 300 pounds?
I
Not
I don't think
including shipping.
Not
they're
including.
they're over 200 bucks. I know that.
Yeah.
It's like it's
Uh,
crazy how the conversion rate is over there. It's like they got to convert the British pounds to USD, which is going to be way more, and then you're not
Yeah.
including shipping, and it's like holy crap, I'm paying like over $300 just to ship a pair of trousers from Cathcart, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
the
meanwhile, I could go
tariffs
to
have made it.
Morello's and pay
Yeah, too.
like quite a bit less, and then get the same quality, you know. It's
Mm-hmm.
like no brainer.
Mhm.
I might
Yeah.
blip for a second here. I'm starting to have battery trouble with my one device, so I gotta switch devices real quick.
All right, sorry about that, folks. Technical difficulties with the screen. It didn't want to work for whatever reason, but we're back on track. And yeah, so
Yeah.
and
Maverick, should we ask him the age-old question of are belted backs overrated?
oh yeah, I think that's one of the questions we should ask on every podcast. Well, what do you guys
Mm-hmm.
think? Are they overrated or not?
I don't think they're the holy grail a lot of people make them out to be. They're cool, they look nice, and I mean, for someone like me, I like having a sharp waistline on my jackets, so they're great for that. But people have put them on a pedestal a lot higher than I think they probably should be. It's another type of jacket, just like anything else. There's shawl collar jackets, peak lapel jackets, not lapel jackets. It's just another detail of jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. Evan?
Yeah, I think it's cool. Like, it's a neat thing, but I think that people confuse belted back suits with just like waist suppressed jackets, which I like waist suppression in jackets, especially for like 30s stuff, but I've seen belted backs from the 30s that are like fake. They're not actual the
Mm.
belt back is like it's not actually really suppressing the waist in any meaningful way. It's kind of just for decoration. And I think by the 70s that was a lot of belt back suits were kind of fake belt backs. They weren't really like
Yeah.
tailored the same way, but I think like back pleats are really cool, and those usually go hand in hand with the belt back. But like, yeah, I think that it's one of those terms that a lot of people hear when they first get into vintage, and so then in their head, a belt back is like a huge deal, but no one actually really knows why it's like they don't stop and think why it's really that big of a deal. So I think they're neat, but I don't know. I don't think I don't particularly like adore them or anything.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I agree that the end they're really cool, they're really nice looking, but it's just they're held up as like a golden standard, like that's the that's the end of the road pretty much. There's nothing better that you can get. And I don't know about all that, but yeah, they're very cool looking and especially the ones that are practical, an extra bonus.
Mhm.
But yeah, to be held as like the end all be all, I don't think that's the end all be all.
no. I honestly, for me, like belted backs are cool. Like everybody else, everybody's like, when I first started doing vintage, ever saw everybody on Instagram. It wasn't as big as it is now, but the accounts I followed, I saw everyone and their mother had a belted back, and I'm like, you know what? They're the cool kids on the street. You know what? I got to be like the cool kids. And then, I got it. I don't know how the hell I put, this happened, but I went on Etsy and I bought my first belted back suit for $75, and it was a nice one. It was a navy. It was like a navy houndstooth, black navy houndstooth, double breasted, belted back on it. I still have it to this day. Just for remembrance, I guess. I don't wear it anymore, but I'd like to. It needs to get patched up, but yeah. Over time, I collected a few belted back suits, and I just didn't have the thrill of wearing them as much anymore. Just partially because they're, I don't know, not what they're made up to be, I guess, in a way, and also
Mm-hmm.
they're very rare,
Mhm.
and I don't want it to get it damaged. And it's like if I want a belted back suit or a jacket, I just get one custom made. You know, just go
Yeah,
to a tailor who specializes in
get it.
30s, patterns and suiting, and get them made
Well,
from there.
the key is to do it affordably too, not to dish out a down payment for one.
Yeah, it's like you're not paying a car loan.
Right.
So,
Yep. And then also, what are your opinions on flat-fronted trousers?
I prefer pleats.
Flat-fronted pants, I think. Sorry, Daniel, did I cut you off?
Oh no, that was basically the end of the statement.
Okay. Sorry, I think I had a delay on my end. I think that pants with a flat-fronted formal wear pants I think can look a little bit uncanny if the rise is too high. I think pleats really perpetuate the illusion of your legs being longer, and then when you remove when you remove the pleat, they do kind of, and especially if you don't have long enough break, I think that it
Mhm.
really can look like you just took a pair of pants and like yanked them up really
Yes.
high, and not in a
Yeah.
way that looks particularly like like fashionable. But I have a pair of like blue 40s flat fronted pants that I do really like wearing, but I'm always I find it more difficult, like, if I'm in a because it's just pants, and if I'm not wearing a jacket, I can never decide whether I wanna wear suspenders or a
Hmm.
belt or, like, what looks better. But, I think it like with a lot of high-waisted pants, I prefer pleats, but I also think that the break makes a huge difference because if you don't have break, that will just make you look like you hiked your pants up too high. With a break, it makes it
Right.
look a lot more intentional. But on the whole, I think, like, with flat-fronted jeans, I think that if jeans, like, for workwear stuff, if they're too high, I think if I don't think I would want a pair of jeans with, like, a Hollywood waist that's, like, up to my rib cage, because you don't
Yeah.
see that a lot in workwear from the 1930s and 40s. Like, workwear pants a lot of the time were a little bit of a lower, like, mid-rise than a true high waist. Um, and I think it overall, like, I think it just especially looking at, like, photos from the FSA archive, and stuff. Like you see people wearing work pants, and they're not the standard for the rise. I don't think was as high as like suit pants. And I think it overall, like if you're tucking like a work shirt into it, I think that actually looks a little bit better, a little bit more proportionate. But yeah, I think flat-fronted formal trousers, they're kind of hit or miss for me. But on the whole, I prefer pleats
Yeah.
if they're going to be like a Hollywood waist, like 13, 14-inch rise.
That's interesting you mentioned that because I've seen, I have to find the pictures again. I don't know where I saw it, but I saw it before. I think it was the 50s. I saw a photo of someone wearing trousers that were cuffed and pleated, but they were denim. And
Hmm.
and they had that Hollywood waist. Now I think if they're doing it like that, it does look good. If it's the flat-fronted trousers, like or flat-fronted denim jeans, like you were talking about, I think they would look better as the way you described them. Yeah.
Oh, so the pants that I actually wear for work are replica U.S. Army. I think it's like model 1907 denim fatigue
Hmm.
pants, which are they're flat front, very high waist, like comparable to most of my suit pants. But I think part of it with them, what helps break it up is they also have very large external pockets.
Oh yeah.
So it helps break up the line instead of it just being completely the
Yeah.
same flat surface the whole way.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a little different for sure. Yeah. And
Which I
those
think
ones
that's
are
part of
having those
why
big
pleats makes the high waisted stuff work.
yeah, and those ones are wider too,
yeah.
right? Those
Oh
navy
yeah.
ones. Yeah, so that's a little different because you know, me and Maverick have always been talking about this is that people always assume or just always know that everyone's pants back then were always full cut, no matter what they were wearing. And it's not true because you can find them wearing jeans that look similar to the cut of today or corduroys or something like that. So
Yeah.
obviously
Hmm.
people were wearing those smaller, slimmer cuts back then. But if it's those navy ones that are like beyond full cut, almost Oxford bags type of jeans, then that's a little different. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think for
Yeah, you
me
see those
personally, when it comes to
Lee
most
Ryder
things, it's
jeans from the 40s.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Um, it's- Zoom is so fun, isn't it?
Oh, big time.
I was just gonna say that those jeans from those Lee Ryder jeans from like the 40s and like late 30s are atrocious looking with
Oh
how
yeah.
slim and low they are.
Yeah, I
But
don't.
those are
Yeah.
historically accurate for Western for like 40s Western stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all just dependent on what you're going for, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you wait? You said the Wranglers, the low ride ones, low waisted
Yeah.
ones. Yeah, I got a pair of those.
Hmm.
I know. I like wearing them with some of my '50s stuff. Like I'm, just running an errand or something like that. I like, wearing the '50s stuff. I know a lot of people associate my account with just '30s and post-war stuff, but I do on a very not would say rare occasion, but once in a while I do like wearing the late '50s fleck jacket with the fleck trousers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are fun.
Yeah, I'll say
Oh,
this in
well,
my case.
yeah.
I kind of have it. My wardrobe is kind of stratified where I really like 50s casual wear
Mm-hmm.
and sportswear, but I very much prefer especially the late 30s Hollywood look and the 40s cut for suits.
Yeah.
Partly because I'm not as big a fan of the bold look stuff, but that's partly because I like having a tight waist on my jackets. That's probably the biggest thing with that. I like having the tight waist on my jackets, and that for me is non-negotiable. But when it comes to the casual wear, most of my casual wear is more 50s style, and there's a lot of great stuff from the 50s. Uh they had I've seen examples of polo shirts from then where it's like almost a full button down shirt that it's got a waistband on it and you're meant to
Yeah.
wear it over, not tucked in.
Oh, a gaucho shirt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some of those about and they've still got like the spear point,
Mm-hmm.
like the dagger collars on them, but it's still clearly a polo shirt style and it's in that 50s like stripe print type thing that they did. I really want to get one. There was one for sale on eBay, but it was like a size too small, and I would not have been able to make it fit.
Do
But I
you
really like that stuff.
you mean like those like almost raindrop style fleck, atomic fleck kind of looking ones?
Those two, but this was one that was distinctly striped.
Oh, okay, okay.
This specific example, it was like a dark brown body with a lighter like mid brown stripe on it,
Yeah, because
and they
I
were
I've
fairly
seen
bold stripes.
I've seen some that look like Hollywood jackets, but they're all it's one piece. It's a gaucho shirt. Sometimes they're short sleeve, sometimes they're long sleeve. Those are really cool.
And
Yeah.
that's the 50s casual wear. That's what draws me in with that. And that's mostly what I wear during the summer.
Yeah.
I wear my casual wear more in the summer than I do in the winter, partly because half my shirts are short sleeve.
Yep.
But it's just more comfortable to wear the casual stuff, when it's hot out than it is to wear a full suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for me
Mhm.
being in California, you have a lot of the California sportswear comes in handy.
And I can
Those
only
these
imagine how warm it gets down there
yeah.
summertime.
Yep.
Well, and also
Yep.
with
And
sorry.
well, I was gonna say it's just like it's the reason I like it so much, the California sportswear, is because it was literally designed for the climate that I'm in. So it looks great and it's the functionality is amazing.
Yeah, a lot of that, a lot, and also too, the Hollywood sportswear stuff, isn't
Yeah.
just in Hollywood. It makes its way over towards the East Coast as well, as you
hmm
see it in a lot
hmm
of,
It
photos and high school pictures. It's like
it made its way to it made its way to Europe. We have pictures of people in Europe wearing Hollywood style sportswear. So yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it was immensely popular everywhere. And it's
the
another topic maybe
Hollywood
we can.
style definitely had a huge influence across the country, I think. Like, I
Oh
think it's
yeah.
very desirable, and outside of California, I've noticed that, like, and in Europe too, like you said, like, people when they find California-made stuff, they seem to get really excited about it
Yeah, that's
because I
kind
think
of
it's
like
more rare,
their
but
version of the
very
belted
desirable
backs.
in that cut.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. But that's kind of an interesting thing maybe we can mention real quick is because I showed Maverick these photos of a Czech band leader from Czechoslovakia, and he's wearing in 1947 these really bold swing ties.
Yeah,
And they're also really long too, which is kind of interesting. And because it's really hard to find any kind of photograph of people wearing ties other than the solid color ties or the striped ties or something like that. The very conservative ones. But they did have them. People did wear them. They were sold in Europe, but it's just really hard to find an example of one. So those photos are kind of really rare in that aspect because it's like one of the few times you actually get to see it. And even in the people in the photo, the people behind him, they're wearing short sleeve loop collar shirts and very American looking style clothes. They're even wearing sunglasses indoors. Very, very hip. And but it's like hard to find that stuff. And so I found two photos of that, and that just goes to show that the American style of clothing was there, and it was literally there immediately after the war ended. So, and I'm sure before the war too. I've seen pictures of people wearing in Germany wearing loop collar shirts during the war. So that stuff was made
Mhm.
there. It's just overlooked. And and that's something that I've been trying to find is like a European made swing tie. I know they exist, but I've never seen one ever.
yeah.
That would be definitely be a grail find
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I've talked to quite a bit of people the other past few days. From Europe, and I told they mentioned like I don't like anything past 1940 or 1938 or I just stick with 30 stuff and it's mostly with the European people they just stick with 30 stuff or 20 stuff and won't typically dive
Which
into post-war stuff which I find very
to
strange.
to a degree, I think it makes a little bit of sense because you mentioned to me at least people in Germany, the reason they stick with pre-war is because some of their post-war or some of their war stuff, some of the stuff in the 40s is very narrow. Like the lapels are slim on double-breasted jackets.
Oh
So
yeah.
in that aspect, I get that. But I, at the same time, to just like completely disregard the American post-war stuff isn't even accurate to actually what happened because a lot of that stuff was brought over, or they took inspiration from those designs and made their own versions. And that's stuff that really did happen. We have photos of it. So, just because some certain things during the war in Europe were not very desirable to certain people, that doesn't mean that you can't take elements from other countries. Because even in England, they were making swing ties. So, that's not that far away from mainland Europe. So, there were there. I know they were there, but finding a photo of it is extremely hard.
Hmm. It doesn't do the European vintage fashion crowd any favors of like dispelling that idea, the notion that they're more buttoned up and less fun than American style, which they definitely
Right.
did.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it's just like it was less common, but it's just people kind of prefer they lean into the really
I
conservative European styles.
Yeah.
I
And so then
think
that kind of just creates the illusion that like nobody in Europe ever had any fun
right.
with their
Right,
with their
but
clothes or anything.
I think it's kind of perceived as not common for them because there's just maybe not many photographs of it, at least published ones.
Yeah,
Because
I
I've
think
seen a
so
lot of
too.
family photos from my family in Europe and ones that I found like on eBay or something that are like swimming in a river and they got some really casual clothes that look like Hollywood clothes. And it's just maybe it's because those type of photos weren't really there's not you can't really find them other than if you look, if you're someone in Europe and you look at your family photos or something like that, maybe it's the only time you would find something like that, but maybe it's just harder to, maybe it's just perceived rather as uncommon because they weren't publicizing those designs and catalogs and stuff maybe, but
I think especially part of it
Mhm.
is just the nature of the way that the war was, because
mm,
it's easy for us to sit here and look at the way that things were done in America during the war. They had the war in their nations. Cloth rationing was a lot more strict over there. They weren't allowed to do even half as much stuff as even we were allowed to do with the cloth rationing that we had.
yep,
Couple that with during the war,
Mhm.
a lot of those families, they're more focused on just getting by day to day, especially when the war is actually going on in their country. They're not exactly as worried about dressing up for the family photo, probably considering half the family was at the front. I
yeah,
think that's
yep,
probably
Mhm.
why there's a lot less of it. And also probably why a lot of people from Europe are perhaps more eager to forget the war years and hang on to the what they might see as the glory days before.
yeah, the golden age, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
but especially during that period, that's when they were wearing the most casual stuff. A regular dress shirt that's just unbuttoned at the top. Like there's a lot of photos I found like that where it's just you can tell they were taken from suits, but it's just like a regular dress shirt and they're wearing it unbuttoned at the top or the sleeves rolled, and now it's dirty because they're you know transporting whatever in a wagon. So some of the stuff it can become raggedy because of the conditions they're in. But especially immediately after the war ended in 1946, a lot of the optimism was coming back, and that's when they started getting more American things. Because, this is also another interesting aspect. I'm sure there was a lot of clothes that were donated from America or England that were given to people in Germany or other parts of Europe. So I'm sure a lot of American stuff ended up there. So that's another thing that I didn't even think
Mhm.
about till now. So yeah.
Yeah. It's
That would
a
make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, a different way to think about it. I didn't think about it like that. Like after the war, a lot of Europe is war and torn, and a lot of people didn't have a lot of clothes. I don't know, like places where you buy clothes, like department stores or something like that, or something similar to what they had in
It's
department
probably some
stores.
of them didn't even exist anymore. Yeah, probably blown
Yeah,
to
it's all
smithereens.
gone. They didn't have any of that, so they had to, you know, I would say thrift. What would you call it? Like yeah, donate clothes,
Yeah.
to these countries that did all that where all this stuff's gone.
Well, I'm sure even the textile mills were, I mean, I know a lot of them were repurposed, but a lot of them also shifted their gears to different kinds of textile production for either military purposes or, reinforcing cities, using, sometimes they produced a lot of canvas, which was used for defense purposes, various things. So it was either because their factories no longer existed or because they were just repurposed for a lot of different things. But yeah, I mean, especially England. I'm sure England and America shipped a lot of stuff to Europe, mainland Europe after the war. So I'm about certain there's a ton of stuff that ended up in that.
Yeah. Um. Well. Yeah. Well, I thought I'd like to, switch gears a little bit. Maybe talk about something a little interesting. What about your guys' opinion about some things? What do you guys think is the most stylish, big band leader or
Mm.
actor and all that? Who do you guys think is the most stylish?
I
Part of me wants to say
think
Clark Gable, but that's because I emulate that man in a lot of ways. He's sort of my idol, but I don't know. There's some pictures I've seen him with some outfits that I do find questionable. There was one picture of him in the mid 30s where he had pants that were set about as high on his ankles as you see some of the suits these clowns are wearing nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally, like, yeah, just gonna go swimming on the lake, dip my toes in the lake, maybe just emulated that look, just want to be edgy.
Or sometimes, people makes people wonder when the flood's coming, their
Yeah,
their trousers are all the way up to their knees, yeah.
yeah, we're gonna go Mississippi or something like that and just,
Yep.
crawl in the mud. But,
Yeah.
uh, well, Evan, who do you, I wouldn't say idolize, but who do you think is, you know, great, stylish
I
guy?
think I think like I took initial a lot of initial inspiration from Fred Astaire's evening wear just because he pulled off evening wear really well, and I think a lot of his day
Mhm.
wear looks really good too. But I think actually one of my favorite like 30s like Hollywood actors or person of influence who I really just I love like anything they wear kind of in my opinion looks great is Cesar Romero.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Cesar Romero's style from the 30s, he just was super, super slick looking. Um, he could pull off. I mean, he's like there's certain photos of him wearing like loop collar shirts over the top of like a bold 40s sport coat, or him wearing white tie. There's this interesting photo of him where he's wearing a black dress shirt, which you don't see very often, like the really dark dress shirts with the lighter tie. I always like seeing examples of that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is another thing that people attribute to like later decades, even though people did do it in the 30s.
Yep. Yeah.
He's
He
wearing
did
a
in the
black
20s
dress
too.
shirt with a really, yeah, a black dress shirt with a really like large houndstooth tie,
Mm-hmm.
and then a cashmere stripe, like morning stripe jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh wow.
and it's kind of I'm not sure how I feel about like jackets that are made in the same pants as morning pants, but or made out of the same fabric as morning pants. But in that photo, he made it look kind of cool. So I always thought that would be an outfit that I think that if I wore, I would it would look really kind of strange, but he pulled it off really well.
Yeah.
Um, I really like
Some
this is for the 30s or the 40s, but Nat King Cole's
Oh.
stuff from the 50s and the early
Uh-huh.
60s, he was super stylish. I actually reference when I very rarely do 50s or early 60s, I usually look at what Nat King Cole wore because I really think he pulled off the slimmer styles just really, really well.
Well, yeah, even his immediate post-war stuff, like his 1946, 1947 stuff is really great. Um,
Yeah, the stuff with his
but
trio they all
oh
look
yeah.
fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, and I think for me, my greatest influences are obviously Artie Shaw. He dipped heavily in the California sportswear stuff. He loved loop collar shirts, swing ties, all that stuff, thin belts. Um, and also I think Nat King Cole will probably be another one for me. And early Frank Sinatra, like the late 40s and early 50s. Well, more so the late 40s Frank Sinatra. Um, and also sometimes Les Brown. Les Brown has some interesting stuff that he was wearing. And I want to say also the I can't think of his name right now. I'll have to think of it in a second. But going back to Artie Shaw, it's interesting because there was this one photo that I found, and I showed this to Maverick, and I don't know if it was because they were on set and they were filming a film, because Fred Astaire was next to him in this photo. And if there was for the film, this would have been for the film Second Chorus. And he's wearing dinner suit pants, so like tuxedo pants with suspenders, and you can tell they're tuxedo pants because he has the satin stripe down the side of it, and he's wearing a loop collar shirt. It's unbuttoned, and he's wearing a loop collar shirt with it. And I don't know if that's he was just being extremely experimental, or if that was just because they were filming it, and filming the scene, and he didn't need any, uncomfortable shirt, so they just wore a white shirt that you wouldn't be able to tell the difference on film. But he was experimental in that sta in that category. In the 40s, he was wearing suede Hollywood jackets, which for some reason I don't find examples of that too often. The suede Hollywood jackets, and um, and for some reason, being as bold as he was, for some reason preferred the single solid colored Hollywood jackets. But Frank Sinatra in particular, like like the immediate post-war period. Some crazy, almost modern stuff that he was wearing, and some of his loop collars that came all the way down to here. He'd
Hmm.
buttoned all the way to the top. Oh, another thing too, him wearing striped t-shirts with casual trousers. Again, that's something that people were wearing often back then. Um, but really, like, my greatest influence really is any big band, either the band members or the band leaders. Usually in the 40s, the late 40s, usually all of them were pretty really stylish. Um, but it's, yeah, Nat King Cole in particular, yeah, that's a great example. I'm glad you brought him up because yeah, he had some, some crazy spear point shirts that you would only find him wearing or something like that. So,
Hmm.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad you said Artie Shaw because Artie Shaw, I was almost going to say Artie Shaw. He was super stylish in a lot of the stuff that he wore.
hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, even for like publicity photos and stuff in the late 30s, he's already wearing a gabardine jacket with probably a loop collar shirt and a really early bold swing tie. And he's wearing that for, his publicity headshot. And then it's one of those really cool jackets too, because you can tell it's gabardine, but the shoulders are pleated. So it's like a really early
Mm.
example of the Hollywood style kind of casual wear, and he's already wearing that in 38, 39. So yeah, he was already on that bandwagon pretty early.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, I know. I know. For me, that's a typically people ask me this quite a bit on my Instagram when I post that I ask a question. That's a difficult question for me. I don't know. I really don't have anyone, honestly. I just base off of basically original photos. I just try to emulate what people actually wore back then rather than based off of celebrity. But I do
Hmm.
like I do really like some of Bing Crosby's stuff. Some of the more casual stuff, like you with the loop collared shirts. Sometimes he just has a blue collared shirt and he just buttons it up all the way with no tie.
Yep.
It could just be a plaid one,
Yeah.
and he just wears a hat, and I think it looks pretty stylish. It's casual,
Hmm.
and he has the pipe, and it just
It's
it's super
it,
Bing.
it goes hand in hand with like streamlined modern. It's intentional simplicity.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah, I think I gotta agree with your sentiments on that. At least um the just kind of doing the general thing, not having a specific celebrity you're copying their style. Because with me, it's more the way that I comb my hair and the way that it doesn't show up on camera the best because for some ungodly reason it's blonde, but I have the Clark Gable style mustache. And then I
Hmm.
comb my hair deliberately based off of the way he does, but to an extent, that's the extent of it. I just dress the general. I know the look that I want. It's from that era, and it's kind of the general late 30s Hollywood style.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
Uh,
Yeah.
looking at original photos, really that's the direction I think everybody should eventually move into. Like, I like looking
Mhm.
at specific Hollywood outfits sometimes because they are really fun, but it's really just the way regular people dressed. Like photos taken of people where they weren't even intending to be taken
Yep.
meant they weren't even intending to be photographed because it's a lot more palatable and it makes it look, I don't know, it's more interesting too, I think.
My
more
yeah,
raw.
my favorite type of photos from that era are candid photos. Yeah, because you get a real
Yeah.
glimpse of how they actually lived. Not a staged photo or not a, you know, photo that they prepped up for specifically for the purpose of taking the photo. The photo was taken in the moment, so it's how it really was. Yeah, and those are my favorite type of photos. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when I first started, I don't know, when I first started dressing vintage, I based a lot of my style on people on Instagram, and I didn't really know before what vintage clothes were, and I just really wanted to emulate that, and I just went off what people wore on Instagram, and eventually I bumped into the realm. I guess I could say it's during the very beginning when I first started. I appreciate a lot of celebrity styles, but I'm like, I don't know. Just I want to see what people actually wore back then, not instead of emulating what celebrities wore.
Hmm.
Because probably a lot of you guys when are into film and all that, but like original 1940s films. But for me, how I got started was video games, like LA Noire, Mafia 2, those games really got me into this realm, this world of vintage. And the vintage clothes didn't come much later. I just got interested in cars. Well, it was first with
Hmm.
ocean liners, like you said, Shilo, Queen Mary. I
Yeah.
was mostly into pre-Edwardian, like just Edwardian ocean liners, and then one of my great buddies over there too, Eric, he got me into Queen Mary, and then that kind of set me off, and with more big band and swing I listened to, and then it kind of gradually got into dressing up, and the first person me and him are like pretty good friends, Retro Sam. He's the one that got me into it, and all because I saw a reel on his YouTube page where he was lip syncing to "Fly Me to the Moon" because I really liked Frank Sinatra's music, and
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know what I take that back. I kind of emulated Frank Sinatra style in the '60s when I first started because I've always like, but I
Oh
did it
yeah,
with,
I
but I
can see
did
that.
but I did it. If
Yeah.
you go back further on my Facebook page, you can see me wearing more like Frank Sinatra style, like back in the '60s. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I watched a 1965 film of "I've Got You Under My Skin." I think it was for a program or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I liked the waistcoat. The three was he who was wearing like some beige. I don't know if it was tweed jacket with a contrasting waistcoat with a dark brown pair of trousers, and I liked
Yeah.
emulating that style. And then you know, that's who I first got into, and I always liked emulating Frankie when I first started back in I would say 2017, 2018. But
Yeah.
and then that's who I'd always base my style off of, and then working my way towards getting back on track here. Retro Sam's page, and I saw his, and then he was wearing his tuxedo, and then watched his YouTube page, and then he had Instagram. I'm like, oh my god, this guy gets it, and then I sent him a text. I showed him some of my videos. I'm like, this guy's never gonna. He's got thousands of followers. He's not gonna give a shit about me. Pardon my French, but and then he texted me back, and then me and him, we met up in Phoenix, Arizona, and we had a grand time, and for a few days, and yeah, me and him became good friends since to this day.
Yeah.
I think I got a lot of my influence from. You guys familiar with the website Vintage Dancer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep, because they have. I spent a lot of time reading their articles, and they have all kinds of. They have pictures of just people from back then, but they also have a lot of catalog advertisements.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I've drawn a lot of influence from those. Like, for example, one of the probably biggest things I got from that was I don't wear my pants with a break. I figured exactly what inseam I need in order to have it. I like where they hover like it's like just millimeters above the top of my shoe, where it's not like well above, but it's also not touching. Like it's right there, just above, so that the
Yeah.
pants hang full and loose. And I really like that look, and that was what I got that from the advertisements I was seeing on Vanish Dancer's website.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
when you guys first started, did you guys were you guys kind of like I don't know, on YouTube or something like that? First introduced to Gentleman's Gazette at all when you guys first started, or
Oh
was that
yeah.
just me?
Oh
I was recommended to them by someone else on a YouTube channel, but real quickly I decided that they don't have the mentality that I want with
yeah. Yeah.
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember watching them a long time ago. I mean, I still watch them periodically, but I remember then seeing the elements that I liked, and and they even had original examples. Sometimes they showed in their videos of stuff that really was from the 30s, and I really liked it. And then sometimes they would show sometimes the stuff that they make themselves, their Fort Belvedere line. And it's stuff that it looks nice, yeah, but I wouldn't wear it. You know what I mean? It's just not, it doesn't really fit into my personal taste. So then I started branching out to other places, and that's where I really just landed on, I mean, just stick with the actual real stuff because initially when I started, it was like I like the original stuff, but I want to see what is being made today that looks like that. And really the answer is nothing. So,
I
yeah.
think one of the things that turned me off of them was after I started looking at them was, and this goes for in general, like the sartorial community these days, is that they get really, pardon my French, they get really damn pretentious.
Yeah.
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 And that is one of those things that I cannot stand people that are like that, no matter what it is, whether it's music, whether it's
Hmm.
fashion. And
Kind
so that
of.
whole community tends to turn me away because they're really pretentious about everything, and it just gets on my nerves.
Especially music. I can, yeah, I know somebody like that. But
We can all
yeah,
name people like that, but
yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
even
it's
in
like
the
the people
Instagram
that,
community.
yeah, I mean, there's also some of the people
Yes.
that insist that, whenever you're not wearing a tie and you have a shirt open, you must wear an ascot. You have to wear an ascot. You can never wear a shirt that's opened with nothing underneath.
Hey, yo, do I look
Yeah.
like my name's Fred? I ain't wearing
Right.
no ascot.
I'm not a big ascot guy. I'm like
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it looks too
I mean, it's not even, well, I was mentioning here too, especially in
pretentious.
California. It's not practical though. And like in California, it's like it's not, it like no, like it just doesn't make any sense for here.
I mean to be and also too, it's just like, do you see like an average person, back in the day wear an ascot? Not a
Very
lot.
rarely.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
rarely.
And also too, like you said, it's just too hot in California, but in Michigan during the summer, we get the humidity.
Yeah.
It's not very practical.
No, I mean, sure, it's soft or whatever, but it just seems like it'd be stuffy to me.
That's
And
part of the reason I
The
wear almost exclusively like loop and camp collar shirts during the summer because it's hot, it's humid. I love wearing ties, but sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah.
You need the extra airflow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The Gentleman's Gazette is symptomatic of a lot of the problems I have with the vintage-inspired communities and the sartorial communities is that and what eventually kinda made me fall out of those circles in preference for true historical stuff is that they have a lot of arbitrary rules that weren't even followed back in the day that they're talking about, but then they take a lot of, so-called rules as gospel, and if you
Hmm.
break any of them, then you're doing something wrong. And I don't know, a lot of the time it's just unrealistic. You can't wear formal wear all the time, and you shouldn't.
No.
No.
It's just the way that it
Yeah. I mean,
And then they've also got that attitude towards buying things where they insist on, oh, you have to pay the top dollar for it. Like the
yes.
Gentleman's Gazette guys, their Fort Belvedere line, they want you to pay like $350 for unlined gloves, leather
Well,
gloves.
Yeah, so is
that too.
Cathcart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that too, and it's like there was a video I saw them that make a while ago, and it's like what to look for if you're going thrifting or whatever. And their idea of thrifting is going to a store that it's a thrift store, I guess, by nature, but it's like one of those stores that's like strictly vintage reseller. So it's gonna be $2,000 for a really nice jacket, or the cheapest thing you could probably find is $350 just for one regular bland jacket. And it's like,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't understand that, because I found Hollywood style jacket cardigans at Goodwill in the women's section, right? True vintage stuff. And it's like, I don't know why I need to be going to these like, well, actually those the way I take it is the vintage thrifting stores that they recommend in themselves are kind of pretentious as well, the stores themselves.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
agree. A
so it's
lot.
just I don't understand that whole yeah.
A lot of and going back to what you're saying, Shiloh, that a lot of pretentious. I mean, it's not just thrift stores too, but like the vintage clothing stores too. Like a lot of
Yeah.
the owners act so gosh darn snobbish, and it's just like it kind of scares people away. Like I did when I went to Davenport, Iowa. This lady was, I picked up that nice red corduroy jacket from the 40s, and
Yeah. Yeah.
she's like, this is museum quality, and you need to have this on a display shelf, and this you need to have the cellophane on this at all cost. And I'm like, lady, this is not a museum piece. You can find these a lot more than, let's say, for, like a original 1880s,
Yeah.
like Levi's or something. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like, and not only that too, but another guy too, which everybody knows here. What's his name?
It's
In Chicago, Richard's Fabulous Finds. This
oh,
guy,
Mhm.
this guy was a bit of a turnoff for me. I went in there and I'm like, just looking around. He's like, and then he's like, oh, this is the big boy section. You don't want to go here. And I'm like, I'm just looking and see what you have. Can you calm down? And then he sells his ties, like some of his stuff is okay, but a lot of it's overpriced. Like a 1940 suit for $500, and I'm like, no.
yeah. Well, like
The worst
the
is when they
mentality of
overprice
like,
something that's. Oh, go ahead.
oh, just like the mentality of like, oh, this has to be a museum piece. Don't ever touch this. You can only look at it. So what is the point of having it? Like, sure,
Mm.
you should have a few examples to preserve, but at the same time, there already are that are being preserved as we speak. So why are all these other ones untouchable? You can't use them for what they were made to be used for.
I mean,
I
there's
don't.
Yeah.
outright fashion museums.
Yeah, textile museums, all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
I don't know if there
Unless it's
was,
like
yeah.
dead stock condition, like
yeah,
something super rare that's dead stock condition, like all the tags on it, or it belonged to a celebrity or someone really
yeah.
influential.
That is
Clothes are
different.
meant to be worn, and it's like that's really the only territory I think where those extreme like prices are justified.
Yeah,
If they're just regular clothes that didn't belong to anybody notable and they've been worn and they're not in dead stock condition, why are you selling this for $800?
right.
Like,
I've
Yeah.
seen I've seen the hand painted ties, which those are really cool, and I think they should maybe be a little bit more than a regular tie, like maybe by $5 or $6, nothing crazy, because those are special. Those are one of one really, because if they're hand painted, there's only one like it. And I've seen some of those going for like just one tie, $150. That's crazy to me. It's a tie.
Yeah,
Like,
it's always the red silk ones too, like the spider
yeah,
webs.
yeah. Well, anything that's like
Yeah.
on red silk that's hand painted, they want an
Or
astronomical price for.
or a palm, one of the hands painted ones that are the palm tree ones.
Yeah, the
That
palm tree ones especially, those ones are crazy. I like those. I love those ones, but I don't like the price because I guarantee you I could go to an antique store and I mean I have found a similar one and I've bought it for $15. I don't need one for $200.
Hmm.
The
yeah.
worst thing for me is when someone has something they're selling something that they charge a really high price for it, but the condition is absolutely not worth that price. I see
Yeah.
it on eBay, especially where someone sells something, they want like $500 for a suit, and it's got like not just moth holes, it has a lot of moth
Yep. Yep. Well, I found some that are like
holes that
that are
it's not $500 condition.
right.
Overtired is really guilty of this. They do this a
Sam
lot.
Simons.
Yeah.
That guy.
They
Oh my
do
I
it
god.
hate
a lot.
over.
I
I
I
despise retired
Oh
vintage.
wait, one. I
I
got.
really
Oh,
do.
this brings back to this brings a story time for me. Story time for everyone.
okay,
Um,
okay.
so years ago, I went to. Do you know where Owasso is, Daniel?
Roughly.
Okay, it's like east of Lansing, pretty much. So
Okay.
they have some antique stores over there, and I went to this. It wasn't really like an antique store; it was like a thrift shop. And there's this guy that runs the booth, and he has vintage clothes, like an older gentleman. But he was selling two of his suits. It was a 1920s three-piece one with like a diamond weave on it. It was like a very beautiful weave on it. And then the other one is a 1930s three-piece with a belted back on it, and it has like these really cool like fish gill pleats on it. And but the thing was, the other suit fit me. It was a little tight, but it fit me all right. But the other one was like a teenager size. It was like a size 34. So I'm thinking, I'm okay. There's no point in me keeping this, and I'm just gonna sell it on eBay. So I sold it. I mean, I was surprised. I did list it a little higher than I think it was like 650. I sold it for, and then you know you can you when I sold it, I checked who bought it. Guess who? Sam Simons. And I
Mhm.
was pissed. And I was like, no, I can't. I don't know if I could decline the sale. So I'm like, okay. He's going to sell it for like $2,500. And
Yep.
then I think like a year goes by. And yeah, he lists it for $1,900. And I'm thinking, good luck trying to sell that.
Hmm.
That's all I have to say. And yeah, he's reached out to me a few times. I blocked him. I was selling one of my swing suits from Fam Taylor's. There's a reason behind this because I think part of it went both ways. Was I measured? Wasn't familiar with measuring. Some things, so it didn't fit right. So I had to sell it. And then Sam Simon texted me. I could take this, and I'm like, no. No, it's just the fabric is not the best on it, and I didn't know much about fabric weight and all this other stuff. So now, excuse me. Now it's like now that I have the knowledge I know now, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Especially the reselling
I've
though. The
had a few
reselling.
friends.
was that Evan?
I've had a few friends who have sold I've had a few friends who've sold stuff to him, like for he massively undervalues what you're giving him, and then he turns around and flips it for like 3 times the price on his shop.
No, it's like
It's
these
no shame
resellers
at all.
will these resellers will gaslight you into thinking, oh yeah, this has it's gonna, low. You need to lower that, or yeah, I could do this or do that, and then they typically just freaking scam you
Yeah.
because they want to get the best deals. So
Yeah, I mean, it's how it works. But yeah, going back to like the 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 pretentious like actual brick and mortar locations like that it's those kinds of places like the ones that I mean like that are truly pretentious like the ones that charge like $100 entrance fee just to go in there.
oh,
Um
Briar Vintage, I'll call
yeah, but
them
it's
out.
like but it's like just to look at them, you know what I mean? Like you're not guaranteed I'm not guaranteeing I'm gonna find anything, but just to look at them I'm gonna have to pay $100. And again, going back to what Evan said, like these are if they were just regular clothes that somebody wore, not of any notable historical significance, how is that any different than me walking into a Goodwill and buying all the clothes that are in there right now, and then 70 years from now, I do the exact same thing with
Right.
those clothes. You know what I mean? How is it any different? But if they're like, yes, if there was a jacket that was owned by Stan Kenton or something like that, right? And we know for a fact it was his because there's a photograph of him wearing it. That's different because that's a one of one. You cannot find that ever again. But if it's just a regular jacket that's like somewhat like those corduroy jackets that you had that you recently bought, right? If it's something like that, why? What's the point? Like, because it's causing the market for this stuff to go way up because that's the new standard because people figure out, oh, you know what? Yeah, people are buying this. I can hike this all the way up and it'll be fine. And it causes the dilemma for us because it's like I'm not going to be paying that much for that. Like there's no point to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if, like you say, you have a jacket that belonged to Les Brown, you shouldn't
Yeah,
be selling that for profit. It should be donated to some sort of
right.
museum. It shouldn't
That
be
should,
worn.
yeah,
So you
because
still don't even really have as that great an excuse for selling it on just like your eBay shop.
Well,
Like that
then
shouldn't
exactly,
be.
and
yeah. Because
circling back,
if you're selling it, you have no guarantee of where it's going to.
yeah,
You know what I mean? If it's
You just care about making money off it. You don't care about
right,
preserving it because it could go
right,
to
and
any.
that
yeah,
yeah, that just
circling.
screams to me that you don't actually care about it. You just care about the money that comes out of it.
Yeah, I was gonna say circling back to like one of the podcasts. Where was I trying to get at here? Yeah, like going to a museum. I mean, yeah, it should be, and
Yeah,
and I think like what Nathan was saying in the last podcast, it should be donated to a museum. So I wanna conclude with a question before we get off here. If there would be one thing you could tell your past self, like like when you first started vintage, what would be one thing that you would tell yourself? Like any advice, I should say.
Lose weight now. That was one of the biggest things that kept me from being able to buy true vintage stuff was I couldn't get stuff that was my size. It took 2 years of going swing dancing before I was fine, or I guess a year and a half of going swing dancing before even just my waist size had gone down far enough to be able to start actually finding stuff that fit.
That's some good advice.
I I think for me it's to don't because I never really did, but I was almost going to is falling for the traps of something like overattired. No.
Evan, do you got anything?
I mean, I'd probably quicker shove my younger self in a locker and beat him up than I would just give him advice. But I think I don't know. I'd probably the most like I think the biggest piece, the thing I wish I had started doing soonest was seeking out more original garments and moving away from vintage inspired stuff quicker
Yeah.
because it did take me. It took me an absurdly long time to like finally start prioritizing true vintage as opposed to just styling stuff vintage because you just can't get the same look without the original garments. And like I appreciate a lot of different decades. I've been wanting to get more into like 80s and early 90s menswear because it has a really similar silhouette, a really similar relaxed feel for menswear that like the late 40s and 50s does. But if I'm going for an era, if I'm going to say I'm dressing in the 30s, then you need 30s clothes for it. Like
Yeah.
I wish I had started doing that more often. And like it took me a long time to start buying. I mean, with ties, it's just a slippery slope. You buy one, and then all of a sudden you have 100 of them.
Yeah.
I'll
My
say.
tie collection was entirely vintage inspired stuff rather than true vintage swing ties. And now I used to not really like bold ties when I first got into it. I preferred the more conservative patterns, but now that's like 90% of my tie collection, and I love them so much. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just buy more. I'm just started. I wish I could tell myself to just start doing more research and start prioritizing true vintage garments
Yeah.
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, if I was going back, if I'd somehow time travel to Norfolk, Virginia, as me as a third class petty officer in the Navy, first starting off in Edge, uh, oh man, what would I tell myself? You know, uh, I would consider myself, don't start off, the way everybody else is. Like, don't follow the sheep, I should say, in the vintage community where
Mhm.
everyone's doing the same thing. Don't be afraid to branch out a little bit, if you know what I mean. Because that's,
Yeah.
like where I was saying in the beginning that, I started off with just pre-war stuff, and I did some 40s stuff, but I was like, yeah, kind of it's ugly bow ties. I just kind of felt I was like in that brainwash, like people telling me, oh yeah, those are ugly. You don't buy those
Or
post-war stuff.
or the post-war stuff is lower quality because it was mass produced.
Well, nobody told me that,
Yeah.
but they're
No,
just
it
yeah.
seemed they probably indirectly told you that. They probably hinted that in a way
Well,
without saying it.
they're just saying like the cut was not good, boxy or whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, it was kind
Yeah.
of like what Rob was saying. It was meant to be like that. It was meant to be comfortable
Hmm.
and sort of
Yeah.
stylish. And I just fell into that trap where, yeah, just didn't just stuck with that, and then until it was too late, and then I'm like, no, what did I do? Or I wish I
That
would have.
happened with music a lot with me. I got completely dissuaded from listening to late 40s jazz music because of people who hated bebop as opposed to
Yeah.
swing. But now bebop music, like Dizzy Gillespie is one of my absolute early Dizzy Gillespie is one of my favorite band leaders.
Hmm.
But like a lot of the music from like 1946, 1949 is some of my absolute favorite stuff now. And I kick myself so much for being so influenced by people who said like, "Oh, anything after Swing's death is not worth listening to."
Right.
Because now I look back at people and they're not interested in jazz's overall evolution. They just
Right.
like one really specific period and they listen to the same music over and over and over again. And that's just
Uh,
not what I'm
Um,
interested in.
see,
y- y-
to a certain extent, I'm kind of one of the people you're describing there because I I wouldn't describe myself as a jazz fan. I'm a blues fan. I like swing.
Mhm.
I like blues. I like jump blues. I really like jump blues. Jump blues is really fun to dance to. And that's where most of my post-war stuff comes in until you get to the 50s and then you have I listen to a lot of doo-wop and like 50s rhythm and blues. I listen to a
Yeah,
lot of
he does.
Mhm.
so it's yeah, I'm not a very big jazz fan. I'm a I describe myself more as a blues fan.
Mhm.
Blues.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's totally fine. It's just I hate I hate not focusing on the stuff that I just naturally was gravitated to and
yeah,
just
yeah.
enjoying regardless of what other people thought of. And like you can apply that to anything, clothing or music or any specific decade,
Yeah.
but I also wish that I had just the stuff I just liked without really having a reason for. I just wish I would have gone all in and like experimented with it more rather than being dissuaded by it because I was worried of being judged.
Right.
yeah. Yeah, it's just like we go out of our way to dress this way because, you know, it's just like we like the style and just not care
this
what
is
other people think, but we do care what people think in our community
yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot. I don't know why. It's just like just being like it's like, you know, you're part of a, you know, a farming community or, you know, a community of its own, and then you're like, oh, this is the guy who does this and that, you know, avoid him at all costs, or, you know, they probably don't do that, you know, in the vintage community, but it's
Yeah.
just like they'll look at you like, oh yeah, no, that's a bad look, or that's
Yeah.
No,
hideous.
there is so much pretentiousness and judgment and like so many webs of people that you're told to avoid or you gotta be careful around. This community is kind of a disaster sometimes. I love it a lot, but I also hate it a lot sometimes, and it makes me the solace I feel in being interconnected with people is great, but then sometimes I really gotta get away from it sometimes because there's just a lot of drama, a lot of crap that kind of
Yeah,
makes you
yeah.
lose sight of
Yep.
why you even like it in the first place, and that's when it stops being fun.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
it gets political for no reason. It's just like it's
Yeah.
just a hobby. Like, well, I mean,
Right.
as much as people want to make it I mean, a lifestyle. I mean, it's just a hobby at the end of the day. You know, it's like we like collecting this stuff. You know, we like to wear it all the time. It's a hobby.
Hmm.
That's all it is. I mean, it shouldn't be taken as serious. Like, you know, end all be all. Everything must be original. You know, it's just like people just
Yeah.
relax, just chill,
Right. Right.
Chill.
and
Exactly. That's the
that's
best
an
piece of advice so far, just chill.
Just chill.
yeah, chill. Everybody just needs to take a chill pill and, you know, get on OxyContin or something. No, I'm just kidding. This
No, no.
program is sponsored by OxyContin. No, I'm just kidding. Or
I don't know. In
Lucky.
my case, I
That
had
was
to in high school. I had to get comfortable with the idea of actually all the way back in middle school. I got comfortable with the idea of not being a part of the popular crowd, the big crowd, whatever. Um, Honestly, the best way to describe it was there's a song by the Ramones called "Outsider," and part of the whole deal with that song is you're an outsider outside of everything because what you see disturbs you. So you're choosing to not be a part of that. And
Mhm.
Mhm.
so I got comfortable with the idea of that real quick to the point where even within the vintage community, there's groups of people that are, oh, only this style or only this mentality. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do my own thing. You guys can be
Mhm.
comfortable
Mhm.
with whatever it is you're doing. I'm going to do my own thing. I might have my opinions about you, but whatever.
Yeah, and then that's where we find, you know, maybe try to find people locally. Like, you know, I thought I was the only one in West Michigan that dresses vintage until I met Daniel, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, we kind of trying to build up a little group here, you know. But, you know, I know Evan, you have a little group yourself there in
Yeah.
Washington, you know, and Shilo, I know there's plenty of people in LA that, you know, go to the Queen Mary in dress vintage.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just where we live, Daniel. It's just like there's not a lot of people in Michigan that dress up. There's just
No, not at all.
like
I'm
three,
glad the,
four people maybe.
yep. And I mean, you and I are meeting up with one of them tomorrow.
Yeah, I forgot her name. What was her name again?
Jenny.
Jenny. Yep. I
This,
bumped into her on my birthday. I wasn't
oh,
wearing
nice.
any vintage. I was like wearing like I was wearing like evil denim jeans and a plaid shirt, whatever. And then I saw Jenny at there's a brewery next to an antique store. Kind of ironic and funny, but if you want to get drunk and break antiques, you can go there. But anyways, um, I went in there on my birthday, after I got done with the antique shopping in Saugatuck, and then I saw her. She was sitting on the table, and I'm like, oh my God, she's dressing period clothes, 1940s. And then I had
Mhm.
to stop and talk to her, and I'm like, hey, I'm like, nice to see someone dressed up like this. I also dressed 1930s and 40s as well. And then I never saw her again. And then Daniel brought her name up, and I'm like, she does look kind of familiar. And then I'm like, it was her.
Because I met her through because she was active in the reenacting scene around here. Used to actually be a regular participant in the Holland Civil War event, but there after I started attending there were a couple of times that she showed up in full vintage 1940s stuff, and I got talking to her about that. I was at one point because she makes a lot of her own stuff. She replicates a lot of her own stuff. I was trying to get her to make a pair of 40 Scout work pants for me, but never came to anything. But yeah, I met her through that. I've ran into her a couple of times there. So
Yeah, and that starts with that, and hopefully we can build up, our local, it's kind of local communities, of vintage.
Yep.
But it's like we always have the people that say, "Oh yeah, I'd like to dress like that," but I'm like, why not? What's stopping you?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
You get those people like all the time say
Or
that.
they'd be like, I'd be
Yeah,
too scared to do
I wish
that.
I wish I could dress like you, and then my response is always just like, do it then.
Right.
yeah,
Stop
that's
wishing and do
the
it.
point I'm at. There was one girl at the swing dance I go to that occasionally would dress like 50s style, but she'd only ever do it there. And she told me that she was always like too scared of doing it in any other setting. I'm like, I've been doing this since like mid high school.
Hmm.
It's not that bad. Yeah, okay, some people might look your way, but you don't, it's not like people make it out to be. I think people psych themselves up for just, oh, you're going to get all this attention and people are going to be looking at you all the time. And really, they don't. You might get a glance or something, but you're going to get a glance like that if you're just dressed nice, anyways. If you're wearing
Yeah,
even
Yeah.
just a modern suit,
just
it's
people are not
Yeah.
used to it,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
It's not as much
I,
as people make it out to be.
I think it stems really from the fear of people that associate it with costumey,
Mm,
which I never understood. And when I started doing, dressing vintage, that was never even a thought in my mind personally, as of what are other people going to think in terms of the negative side. I never thought of that because it just never crossed my mind that way. But
Yeah.
I certainly see why some other people would be because sometimes it's associated with especially if for whatever reason if you add a hat with it, it's for some reason costumey to people.
Yeah, I know
And
what I
Mhm.
I think like there's people here at college like it sounds terrible saying, but some of the more unusual type of students, that wear the capes and they wear the what is it, the hat, the fedora, redditor admin fedora, trilby style fedora, and
yeah,
I don't want to call this guy out, but this has to get done. But yeah, and then
this
and then people affiliate that with what I'm wearing, and I'm like,
yeah, I
no,
know.
no, no, no. I'm a
Yeah.
normal guy, guys. I'm normal.
Yep.
Peaky
Chill.
Blinders and Reddit have done insurmountable damage to people's perception of hats.
Oh
Yeah.
no,
Well,
it's even worse when you wear the flat cap. I've done that a couple times, and
Yeah.
oh man, it's usually Peaky Blinders or when I wear plus fours, my plus fours from Blackbird.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you going golfing today? And I'm like, no.
sometimes I would be just wearing a houndstooth, and people, are you going golfing? I'm like, What? Like houndstooth was like very old, like before people were using it for strictly golfing. I don't know where you got that from, but yeah, I'm
no, the
going
most
golfing. Yep.
Yeah.
the most out there reactions I tend to get is whenever I'm wearing riding breeches. Because yeah, I do have a pair of plus fours and I do enjoy wearing them, but I like tall boots. I've always liked the English knee boot style. I've always liked the look of those. In fact, I actually have Blackbird making a pair of riding breeches for me right
Hmm.
now. I love wearing them, but that's usually when I get the most out there reactions from people
Yeah.
is when I'm
Or
wearing
when
those
you
because that's especially unusual.
wear a trench
Especially like the
coat.
flared jodhpur style ones,
Oh yeah.
which is the ones that I like.
Yeah.
But
Or when you wear a trench coat and people just affiliate you as a police detective or Inspector Gadget. Woo-hoo.
Yeah,
I
I
hit.
mean,
So I went to.
I got called
Go ahead.
Inspector Gadget, or I had a guy drive up to me. This was last year when I was doing like a reel or something like that. Attempted to make a reel, and I was in Lowell. Daniel, you've been to Lowell on the
Yep.
riverboat, and I was making a reel or whatever, and this guy was driving with his pickup truck. This older like guy, whatever, and he saw me and he was driving past, rolled down his window and pulled up his wall. He's like, police detective much? And he's like, ah, ha, ha. And I'm like, and
I
I say,
I
get the boop out of here.
maybe like a year ago, I went up to I was in Hollywood and I was wearing an overcoat, a double-breasted overcoat, and like by separate people, like one or two times, I was called Baron Trump. That was a first.
What?
Yeah.
I don't see. I'm sorry. I don't. Hopefully, you don't
No, I
take
don't.
offense to this. I don't see any comparison.
No, I don't either. And it's I don't know if it was the overcoat. I don't know what it was, but it was like it was cold enough to wear one. So I said, why not? So I wore one, and I had like one or two people. Oh, it was funny because you know those what do you call them? Because it's like a truck, but they have the top chopped off, and it's usually what they use for touring, like a touring truck or touring
Oh
van, something like
yeah.
that. So they had
Sure.
one of them was passing down. I think they were going on Vine and on Hollywood Boulevard, and I was on the street corner. And they were like, "Oh, on your left, you'll see Barron Trump." I thought it was funny.
Oh no,
You guys ever got
that
the
is
Monopoly
horrible.
Man?
What is it?
Got a Monopoly
No.
Man?
No.
Yeah, so okay, this might be more a problem I've had because okay, some of the dances I go to are formals. I go dancing a lot, and there's a lot of different themes that they have. Several of them are formals, and I actually just went to a masquerade dance last Thursday, and because it was a masquerade. So one of the things I have a 1930s Prince Albert frock coat.
Hmm.
They actually made them up through the 50s. I've seen an example from the 50s. But I have a 1930s Prince Albert frock coat, and I wore that and matched that with 1930s tuxedo pants, and I wore a top hat with it and everything. But this was a private dance, so there wasn't any issue with it here. But there's been other times where I've been out, especially if there's been a dance in Grand Rapids, and I've had to walk from like a parking garage to the
Oh,
dance or something like
mhm.
that,
Yeah.
where if you're wearing any sort of dark suit, even like, yeah, in my case, fine, I was wearing a frock coat, but if you're wearing any kind of dark suit or anything that remotely resembles a top hat for formal wear with a bow tie, Monopoly Man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's
That's the
crazy.
first place
You
people go.
know what's crazy,
I hate
Daniel?
going to Seattle to go
Oh,
watch. I hate going to Seattle to watch silent films or like Benaroya Hall, like Seattle Symphony performances because I always have to park several blocks away from the concert hall
Oh,
and walk. But I always try to wear a tuxedo when I go.
hmm.
And I get so stressed out and like anxious when I do that because you're walking in the streets of Seattle, which at like 7 p.m., which is already kind of spooky. But also, yeah, I just feel like everybody's like the evening wear. It's always when you're outside heading somewhere in evening wear that it's like that's when I'm the most socially anxious about like vintage clothes. Aside from that, it doesn't bug me much anymore. But yeah, that's when the Monopoly Man accusations and stuff really get flung around.
Monopoly.
oh, well, I
Yeah.
had I went to Grand Rapids years ago. The Grand Rapids Brewery. This was back when the Grand Rapids Brewery was opened. I went inside, wanted to get a drink, and then there's these drunk, like middle-aged men come up to me and just like pose for a picture, like they pose their phone like this, like they're aiming at me like a weapon, and just snap a photo. They're like, yeah, and I was like this. I'm like, what's up with the picture, dude? He's like, you remind me of a slot machine in Vegas. And I'm like, okay. So does
Okay.
that give
Yeah.
you permission or, the passage to take a photo of me or something like that? An open invitation? And then, yeah, I was not, and then, I don't know, they're trying to be cool with me, and I'm like, dude, just stop talking to me. And I'm like, that was not cool. And I
Let me
just,
have my beer in peace.
this happens to me quite often too. Like random people like just taking pictures of me without even asking. It happens a lot, and I don't really.
Mhm.
They could do that, but I really don't appreciate it. Just ask. I'm
Mm.
like, I'll
Yeah.
say good. I'll
Yeah.
say yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Daniel, I think we've had a couple of people at the Manhattan Dolls events that wanted to. They're like, I think they wanted a picture of us or something like that, or they were asking like if we were like part of the set or whatever, part of the set.
Yeah, there was some of them that thought we were with the group.
We're like,
I still get a
no.
kick out of the fact that they ended up choosing the picture of us with them to post to their Facebook for that.
Yeah, they did. They really like. There's yeah, and then
That
me and Daniel were like singing along to like almost every other song or something like that. Or just
Yep.
and then we're like,
They enjoyed having us there because we were at the table right up at the front, and they walked out and immediately saw us sitting there full 1940s and immediately took notice.
I bet they were really surprised that was like that
Right.
caught them off guard, and they liked picking on us, you know, a little bit
Yeah.
flirtatiously.
You know, that reminds me of when I'm on the Queen Mary, because I'm either wearing vintage or I'm wearing a vintage uniform from the ship. And when I'm wearing the uniform, especially, like I don't know how many family photos I'm in because they think I work there or something, and can we get a picture? And I have a picture with them and their kids or something like that, and it's like from their in their family album. Like it's happened at least like 50 times. It's funny.
I say at this point, there's probably quite a few of them, few pictures with me and them floating around. Between that and the reenactments I do, I ended up on the for one of the Civil War musters I did. I ended up on the front page of Holland Sentinel newspaper article
Oh wow.
Wow.
about it.
It's pretty
It's
cool.
a picture of me because I do a Prussian Observer impression
Mm-hmm.
there. So you got me in full like Prussian engineer captain uniform getting escorted by two of the Union boys, and it's right front and center on a Holland Sentinel article about the event.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that. That's pretty cool though. But yeah, absolutely. I think yeah, we got a little sidetracked here. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, we just love to talk. I don't know,
we
uh,
do.
but yeah, I think it's
We'll
about
have to do it more often. We'll have to do it more often off of the podcast then. I think that's what that
yeah,
means.
Yes,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, I think we'll just conclude with this podcast. You know, but yeah, it was a pleasure having you guys on here, Daniel and Evan.
A
Yeah.
pleasure being on.
Yeah, and
Thank you
Daniel
so much
also.
for inviting me.
Yeah, Evan, this is the first time I've chatted with you. It was great actually talking face. I mean, not face to face, but
In a way, yeah.
Right.
yeah, video chat through here.
Screen, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then Daniel, I'll obviously see you tomorrow. You
Yep.
know, it'll be a fun time. Yeah, I always enjoy driving to Holland. You know, it's a great town for sure.
And Evan and Shilo, it was good meeting you guys.
Yeah, yeah. Good
Nice.
meeting you as well.
It was good to
So,
meet more people in the community.
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely, yeah.
so that will conclude for this podcast. So hopefully, we'll be posting another episode, and maybe in the next few weeks or so. And yeah, we'll see who joins, and might be from different countries. Who knows? So
Well,
we'll stay in tune for that. So hopefully you guys have a good evening. Take care and goodbye.